Podcast not number one for sure.
Women and men are completely brainwashed. Okay, I'll start it off. You guys were sharing a little story about someone y'all were talking to recently who was going through some low self-esteem stuff and talking about their goals in life, and you could see kind of the contradictions within it and how all the low self-esteem played into it. But then also one of the things I picked up on is this independence brainwashing that people have, right? Of like, I need to have some independence. And you see it especially in women today, where it's like, I don't need a man, or I can have a man, but I need to also have my own sort of income or independence. I don't need to be taken care of, right? Which is really fucked, because a woman does need to be taken care of in the context of, especially when they have kids. Now, outside of that, it's not that they like just need someone to always be protecting them, uh, but when a woman has kids, how can they really focus completely on all of that in the household and everything if they're also having to think about where they're going to make money, and not even just wondering where it's going to come from? Because if you have a husband, or the man in the situation, and they're also weak within the ability to make money, even if they're the one responsible for it, the woman's still going to be like wondering where it's going to come from. But I'm saying, let's say the man is taking care of it, or if they're not, rather, if they're not even in the picture is what I mean, then the woman's going to have to go to work. Obviously, they're going to have to go to work. But then how can they properly take care of children? And then you start getting into all these other ideas. Well, you have the village, and you can have grandparents and other people helping out, and this community thing. That's not best. That's not the best way to do it. You as the parent know your child intimately more than anybody else does. Like, I know about my kids, what food they like, what food they don't like, what food they react to, um, you know everything that they've learned so far, and Katie as well. It's like, we know all the little details, so I know if they're acting in a reaction, so I can support them, for example. But a woman can't learn all of that and be totally focused if there's the income isn't taken care of. So maybe we can go into some of that, because Mitch, you're in a relationship now. You just moved into a house, which it sounds like, from what Drake's telling me, it's like awesome. And you've got Jess there, and you guys are really working together. And it's cool seeing you guys move, because you're both still relatively young. I mean, she's really young compared to, where I was when I started this process. I think she's like 20 or something, right?
22.
And so 19, right? And I was, really? I thought
Did you say 22?
22.
I was like, no way.
Was that? She's 12?
That's 22.
Dating a 9-year-old?
I was 24.
The headlines are out now.
I was 24 when we even started with Destiny and everything. And
Wow.
still, even then, it was like years before I was even starting to become stable at all.
That's so
But
cool.
it's really cool to see how quickly you guys have moved, right? And I know Asif is in a relationship. Drake's still looking for that perfect one out there.
Yeah, the
Right.
one,
Hit me
your
up.
soulmate, your twin flame.
That's right.
If you go
Twin flame
to
applications now.
self-perfected.com/applications now.
Slash matches.
Join the group. Send me a message.
Drake's initials are DP.
No, but each person's in their own process within the point. But I would suggest that it's more the woman's role to look for the man than vice versa. It's not that the man, you shouldn't be out there like talking and doing all that stuff, but it's like, with men, you can get focused on, you're building your business, you're stabilizing within that area. So by the time you meet the person that you're compatible, it makes sense. They have this, they're aligned with the principles. You could just go into it. So,
So I want to hit on a couple of points.
Yeah.
Because the initial point of like, so for example, when you're like, it makes more sense that a woman at some point would need to be taken care of if things were ideal, right? Or even just generally speaking, if you want to. It's like, it's not because women are dumb and weak and have to be treated like children, like not at all. It's like, you're going to go through, again, if you choose the purpose of being in a relationship, you generally start a family. It's like, you're going to go through this thing that is the only thing of its kind, which is bearing a child. And like, it requires a lot of physical energy from your body.
yeah.
It's the same reason why in a corporation, there's a little bit more expanded, not that specific point, but it's the same reason in a big company, they have the accounting department, they have the sales department, they have the human resources department, so that the accountants don't have to focus on selling, just focus on accounting. Salespeople don't have to worry about accounting. They just focus on sales, and
Yeah.
they pass it over to the accountants to handle that. It's when we get to specialize, we become much better. And this is the saying, jack of all trades, master of none, right? It's like, now the where it comes from, here's what it actually comes from. This is what I think. And this is what I've actually heard from many women. It's the starting point is realizing that I'm not good at maintaining a good relationship. And I don't trust men because what if they cheat on me or something like that? When we break up or divorce eventually, like my mom, like my aunt, like I'm not going to be able to provide for myself. So you see that starting point is really within realizing it's like, yeah, I can't fucking actually communicate and be able to like change myself and work with other people. Therefore, I have to be able to provide for myself. So when I eventually break up with my partner, I'm good.
That's such a
Otherwise,
good
I'm
point.
trapped. Right.
That's such a good point, because like I've seen that within myself as far as before joining TechnoTutor, is like not even thinking it was even possible to be in a relationship like long term, because I'd never seen it done in my own family, you know.
Right.
And so like just my own starting point was just like, well, you know, it's not even a possibility, so just automatically sabotaging it from the starting point, rather than even trying to apply, you know, for even trying to commit. And even walking through that for myself has been really eye-opening. And it was a challenge to be honest with myself about like, no, I'm acting in that way, or I'm perceiving it this way because I have the starting point of this can't work, you know? So I see that also playing out in what you're describing, as far as like you get into a relationship and it's like, oh, like a woman is trying to be independent and then therefore not focusing on the relationship itself. Therefore that sabotages the relationship, creating the whole point that she's preparing herself for, while at the same time trying to avoid that point.
Right.
Well, and to build on that, it's like we live in a society of such weak men that suck at communicating and that don't believe in themselves and have low self-esteem. So we can't just blame
Exactly.
women.
You can't blame them. Yeah.
And you can't. So it makes sense why that's a thing.
And the male aggressiveness aspect becomes so distorted.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always think of like that big bodybuilder guy that's all greased up, where it's like no woman wants that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's just some fake weird bullshit. Or like the guy who's super overly macho and like has to prove it kind of a thing. That's not what we're talking about either. Like being,
I got this, babe.
yeah. And it's like
Babe.
it's more about taking responsibility and aggressiveness as in pursuing your goal. You know what I mean? Versus just being aggressive all the time for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when it's not necessary. You know,
That was cool. I remember when I looked up the definition of one of the definitions of aggressive in the Princeton open source dictionary, it was the energetic pursuit of your goal. Where if there's something that you want, you're not going to let people hold you back from getting it, or anything from getting it. And that's what a woman would want in their partner. It's like, I think the coolest thing with my relationship with Maylat has been, as she feels like, if you just look at the emotional aspect of knowing that I could support her if she's going through something, and I actually want to work with her and things like that, which is something that we don't get when we're children throughout our whole lives, unless you've been exposed to these tools, to be honest. Right. Or the people in the self-perfected group. It's like you actually have either, the distributor, TechnoTutor, all that stuff. It's like for the first time, you have somebody who can support you to understand your emotions and your emotional states. Other than that, you don't have that. Right. And so being able to just take time, and then she feels understood. It's like over time, that kind of defense mechanism of needing to be like, stay the fuck back from me, like put up this wall, it just falls away. And it's cool because we moved out recently, right? Just like Mitch and Jess. and she's seeing her femininity come out more and more, and she stops suppressing it now. Like now she'll say something like, "Hey, we're going for a walk, right? We were going for a walk today," and her hands were in her pocket, right, like that, and I slipped my arm in it, and she's like, "Don't do that." I'm like, "Why?" Like I knew why, right? But I'm like, "Why?" Because she's all like, well, not she's all like, but when she began, she was like, feminism, like, fuck gender roles, right? But she was realizing, she's like, I do participate in gender roles when it benefits me, right? And she was saying, she said something like, oh, I just want to be chill. I'm like, really? Is that what it is? And then she was saying, she's like, no, actually, in honesty, she's like, it's just like the woman's role to put their arm through the, like put their hand through somebody's arm, like that. If you're walking, the male's walking and they put their arm through the female. You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
And for those of you listening, it's like when a man has their elbow out, and the lady grabs the inner of their arm, so they're kind of like holding on to the man as they walk. And the point is, it's like she laughs because she's like, "Oh man, like I'm so sexist," like she's making a joke. She's like, "I'm such a sexist," How
That's
dare
funny.
I say that,
Yeah.
But it's cool because she's realizing, she's like, I like baking. Like I don't mind cleaning. It's not that that's my entire life, but I'm no longer judging it as if I have to do this, then this is an abusive relation, like all that stuff, right? And not that she ever has, but she's just watching that in a real relationship. She doesn't have that, but it's because she knows that we can communicate as equals. She knows that if there's something bothering her, she could just tell me. If I'm just throwing shit all over the place and like being like, oh, fuck it, like I don't have to do anything, then that would be ridiculous. But she trusts that I'm reasonable, that I'm not going to just react and get upset if she asks something of me.
Right.
And
that's a key point too, it's not the equal balance in each person doing 50% of each thing. It's the equal balance within each person's taking full responsibility. So I know you're not abusing it. And if I see that you are, I'll say something and I won't accept it, but not having to react to it because you might, and that's like part of the problem.
Yeah.
What else were you going to say, Asif?
I don't know. It'll come up later.
Okay.
But what Mitchell was saying. Okay, you go ahead.
So Jess and I made that video recently about 50-50, how a lot of couples, it's like, well, I expect you to do 50% of the dishes or 50% of the money or whatever, right?
By the way, that video was hilarious.
Yeah, good. We have more where that's coming from. So, because I never saw that effective balance in my life. And my parents are still together and they're, fairly happy together. And I'd say a fairly loving relationship. Like they don't bicker pointlessly and they're openly spiteful towards each other. There's like little things, but I had never seen truly one partner taking on full responsibility and the other taking on full responsibility until I met Cameron and Katie. And this is the power of the group. This is the power of Self-Perfected, is you get to see other people doing this because you look out in the world and there's nobody else doing this. I mean, I see some couples that look like they're kind of happy together, but they aren't speaking out and actually breaking down how they do it and creating videos and trainings and things like that, like we have within the Perfect Parenting group, for example, where it's actually explained and then the support is there. And then you actually have the tools to change yourself. So I've noticed that is so massive. And it's become now abundantly clear to me that, so like last night we had a housewarming party here. It was awesome. Had a bunch of people over, a lot of couples, a lot of individual people too. And Jess spent all day making food, making soup, desserts, all sorts of stuff. She like cleaning the house, all that. And then Drake and I were just focused on business building things. And it was fucking awesome. And Jess and I had a conversation in the process of like getting the house ready for this. And then also in the aftermath of the party, where like a very practical example of this was after the party, the house was kind of a mess, had dishes in the sink, things like that. And then it was me, Drake, and then Pedro, who's part of Techno Tutor here in Minneapolis. And it was like midnight and we were hanging out and just like talking about like bigger vision, what our plan is, like getting into politics, like next level stuff. And we're just sitting in the family room, just talking, masterminding, like, like building our relationship. And Jess is in the kitchen cleaning. And like, I look over and she just has like a smile on her face. Like she actually genuinely enjoyed it because she saw, for her and for us, it's best to have the house clean. It's going to be great. It's going to make tomorrow, like the whole week's off to a great start now. And in the past, I know on the subconscious level, I would have been like feeling a little bit like, oh, maybe I should go over and help her or whatever. Yeah. But I know that she knows, because we have good communication, that she's happy to be doing that, knowing that I'm here with Drake and with Pedro, fully present. Not like, oh, there's like a little piece of me that's like, I should maybe help her or some shit like that. That doesn't cross my mind anymore. But it's so fresh in my mind that I want to share with people. This is a very practical experience of what a effective partnership looks like. So now I could actually be fully present. And now Pedro just, I can tell, shifted to the next level. Drake keeps shifting. I keep shifting. And Jess is. And it just flows because Jess and I have that agreement, which there's only a handful of people that I know who actually have that level of agreement, but it is so fucking awesome. And you need to, it is best to have that. Yeah.
Dude, you guys are going to have such an advantage when you have kids because you'll already have worked a lot of that out. Yeah. Whereas like Katie and I had to walk it in like real time of like, oh, this is causing a problem. We need to stop. We need to change.
Right.
So your children will have less consequences to deal with of instability and stuff because of that. So it's cool. People, it's not about avoiding conflict. It's not like about everything has to be perfect all the time. You want the conflict because it was there anyways. So then you can resolve it because we have these tools of self-awareness and self-responsibility and self-forgiveness. So you don't have to hold it against yourself or hold it against the other person. You look at it, what needs to be changed, and you change it. Right. And that's been the key for Katie and I, is we also have a level of trust with each other where it's like, we can point out like, okay, look, this is something that needs to change. You have to stop this. And then we might react for a moment and then we go and reflect on it and then do what we need to do, look at it, change it. And then it's not an issue anymore. And so our kids, it's like, I see other parents, and I also have my own experience as a child with growing up with a family to reflect on. And I know I can see the level of trust that our kids have with us versus, and it's not even just they just do what we say. It's and they're okay with doing other things too, but it's like they don't, it's like we all enjoy being around each other. When we go out and we do stuff, it's not just each person in their own little bubble. It's each of us considering each other, and so it just makes things a lot more fun generally. And so I think people might initially get the impression that it's like all this sacrifice all the time of like suppressing all your inner desires or something like that. And it's not actually that. It's actually getting to access the things you really want to do when you remove all the BS stuff. You mentioned something earlier on our parenting call, Asif, about somebody you were talking to, and this point about, they didn't want to necessarily come down and like visit us when you guys come down because it might be boring. But maybe you can talk about that, because I think that's a big point of the brainwashing that males have. Because, with females, it's so obvious what the brainwashing is. It's feminism. It's not that means you reject everything. We're not saying women and men aren't equal. We're saying, but they are different. And I think that's where the line gets blurred within feminism. It's like, no, we're exactly the same. Unless we get the advantage, like you were saying earlier.
Like the bullshit part of society is thinking that you could just force everybody to do everything. Like just take away, like put it into law that they have to do this or they can't do this, and then everybody will be happy.
But think about this: it's like men and women are equal, right? Women are not weak, and men are not stronger. So we need to have the men just take responsibility for being assholes, so the women can just continue to be perfect as they are. And it's like, wait a second. Sounds to me like you're trying to tiptoe around the women's feelings. And like Drake, remember that video that you sent me about like the math anxiety and all that stuff? Yeah. And there was that study showing how there's a whole video with context and everything, but it was saying how specifically when they were looking at Black students, how if you tell them, it was something like, I'll just give the general point. It's like when you tell people you're just as good at math as everybody else, then they have this anxiety to like make that true, to perform it. And that was actually, they showed more detrimental than saying you're not as good at math as other
just not saying
races
anything.
Or whatever.
Just
or not
saying-
saying anything. No, but specifically saying you're just as good,
Like you
puts
would think
pressure,
that saying you're
and
not
it's actually
good
more
is
detrimental than
detrimental.
saying you're
Right.
worse. Because
Yeah.
the idea is if you say you're worse, then you would do poorly, right?
Right.
Like you would do, it's bad for their self-esteem and so forth. But it's hard actually to fuck with someone's self-esteem when they actually know something.
Yeah.
I mean, you can abuse them and definitely do things that are not effective, that are harmful. But telling them like, oh, you're not as good as somebody else, therefore you have to work harder. Common sense. Now, just because a kid's black doesn't mean they're automatically worse at math than a kid who's white. Like clearly that in itself is not valid. But it was interesting to see like how they could show that it was actually more detrimental to just say, no, you're just as good. Because then when you didn't perform, like let's say you don't have the vocabulary and therefore you don't do well. Well, what's the explanation now? Because you were supposed to be just as good. Well, clearly it's a racist test. You see, so it then goes into all this other bullshit that's not the solution across the board is equal vocabulary.
Yeah.
You see, that's the real key. And same thing with men and women. They should be equal in their vocabulary, but that doesn't mean they should be equal in everything that they do. So there's so much of saying that we're all exactly the same that has had, so it's like women are just as good at men as anything. But yet when you go into an environment, what will happen is the women will say that the men are taking advantage or they're doing these things to hurt women or whatever. And it's like, but if you're just the same, then this shouldn't matter. It should not be an issue, actually, if you're actually the same. And think about this. How is it that men have dominated women for so long if they are the same? It doesn't
Yeah,
make sense logically.
I mean, if you go back and like you said earlier, it takes a village, right? Like I think most people, what they think of, well, it's an African proverb, right? But most people think of like indigenous peoples, wherever they are, raising kids as a village. But even in those tribes, right, the men were out providing, they were out hunting, they were out making sure so that the village could even exist, you know, so that the women.
Oh my God, I
were
just had an
still
amazing
there.
idea for
Yeah.
a show. Desperate Housewives of whatever Zulu tribe.
Okay.
And it's just the women like sitting around, like knitting the kids' clothing and like making their food and shit and like not arguing with each other about anything. Like there's no like competition between the women. They're just like working together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but you
There's
see what
no
I mean?
drama.
That's the part they don't consider.
Yeah.
Is in those, they're not trying to compete with the men. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. I'm not in that environment, and I'm not saying we should all go live like in a fucking
So,
tribal
so to be
society.
clear, the distinction that you guys are making, or Drake specifically, is like right now people are thinking it takes a village means the woman goes to work and then everybody raises the kid. But what you're saying
Right.
is it takes a village, as in one group, usually the men.
I'll say it really clearly.
Yeah, sorry.
It takes a village, as in the woman is still there, very active in that role. Like she's there 100% of the time. But it's also the whole rest of the village. Like this is the village. Like us having this conversation, our group self-perfected, that's the village, right? Getting that support of, okay, you're doing this, you're in that role, you're taking this responsibility. Here's how we can support you to do even better. That's the village, right?
And think
It's
about this: like
not
a woman,
so that
a woman who has kids, they've never had kids before. They're gonna need support from other women who are like, "Hey,
Right.
we've been there. We know what you're going through." Like that all makes sense.
yeah.
But that when Hillary Clinton says it takes a village, that's just brainwashing that is being done so that in this country we will accept a form of communism.
Mhm.
You see what I mean? Where it's like everybody's exactly the same. Men and women, exactly the same. Men can raise children, women can raise children. Everybody can just pass the children around. Like it's not actual.
You can
units
give them
of
to the
people.
system. You can just give them to the school. We'll take care of them.
Right.
No
Like,
problem.
what's the difference? Just give them to some teachers that don't even care about your kids. It's all the same. It takes a village. It takes a village. And it's like, but we don't live in villages. We live in fucking urban centers where millions of people are smashed together. And like you guys have y'all been to New York City?
Yeah.
Mass Utopia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mass-
What?
Yeah.
Mouse Utopia?
Mass Utopia.
No, I brought it up because I've been to New York City a few times. My mom used to live in Brooklyn. And when I would go visit her, and I remember when I'm with Katie one time, and it was my first exposure to being in New York City and like riding the subways and just all that stuff. And I wasn't doing the tourism thing. I was just
Okay.
going about the city, like
Were
as,
you
almost as if I lived there because I was just visiting her, huh?
did you live in the city at the time? Because I know at some point you lived in a more rural area. No.
Yeah, no, when I visited her with my mom.
Yeah, but I mean, like you on your own. Were you living in a?
Well, I grew up in Houston.
Okay. Okay.
So for like 16 years, and then I went to Portland, and then I lived in North Dakota for a period of time in some town of literally 150 people.
There you go. Yeah.
And then when I moved to South Africa, in between, I went and visited my mom, who was living in Brooklyn at the time.
Okay.
And so then we went, we went to downtown, Times Square. It wasn't like we did a tourist thing. We just happened to go to all the places that probably a tourist would normally go.
Did you
but we
go
were
to
just
the Village?
Which
Like a part of
village?
Manhattan called the Village.
I don't know.
Oh,
We went to
right.
that
Okay.
the
I hear
park,
they're
the
doing
big
it
park
well.
there.
The Village.
It takes a village to raise a kid.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It takes the Village.
Literally,
No village.
we
They're
got on
doing
the
it
subway.
there.
It took us to the village.
Yeah.
But
We missed the point the whole time.
what I noticed though is that, and actually I noticed this in Portland too. You don't look at people. Like I remember this one time I was in Portland.
I
and this is
love
when
I love how you say that, and both Drake and Mitch shake their head right away of like, this is a very common thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I lived right outside New York for a year, and it is crazy. You go downtown at like 8 a.m. and you get off the subway, and there's like a whole family of homeless people, and you're just like, all right, I mean, I got to get to my meeting. So it's like instantly like there's inequality. You just accept it. And then
Like-
there's like businessmen, and it's all like rushing.
if you sat on a subway and there's someone else across the thing and you would looked at them and you were like, hey, how's it going? They'd be like, why the fuck are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously, that's
Yeah.
what it's like. And
Yeah.
even when I lived in Portland, it was like that. When I would ride the bus places and stuff, so you didn't talk to people. That's part of being in that sort of crammed together kind of environment. So this idea of it takes a village and all that, it's a bunch of bullshit. It's just taking some emotional idea that makes sense
feels
because
good.
now we've created a consequence where women don't have a husband or a man like who's fully there taking full responsibility, and so now it's like we're trying to cover it up and make the best out of it instead of looking at what's actually practically the best. And then that's sometimes where people kind of don't like what we're saying because they're like, well, you're just judging everybody who's in these situations. And I'm like, no, I get it. I was raised by basically a single mom. I mean, I had dads throughout the process, but for a certain period, it was just me and my mom and my brother going around. And then it was me and my dad. And then, it's all fucked up. So I get it. I know what that's like, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about what's actually best.
Yeah.
Because somebody out there might be like, hey, I want to actually do what's best for my kids. And you don't give them the opportunity if you just lie and bullshit about what's actually best.
Yeah.
And so,
I also want to say from my perspective, what I was bringing up earlier as well is like, I didn't know that it was a possibility to,
Right.
have that kind of like a family, like a real family, and I was thinking, I'd already decided in my head that I would never have that. That's never going to happen. It's like not even something to even aspire to, because I felt for myself, I didn't even want it. But the reason why I was feeling that is because I had all this brainwashing, right?
dude, this is like huge right now. And it's like, I don't have friends who are sort of just fully in that, obviously, because everyone in my circle is doing this, right? And obviously adding to that. But it's like, generally speaking, I'm also 36, so I'm not young, like going out in the social dating circles and stuff like that, right? But I see like the articles, so I can kind of see what people are being impulsed with. But I also talk to people, and it's like even the concept of get married, have a family is becoming a like that's like an old way of thinking.
Yeah.
But it's just leading everything towards a point where everyone is so easily controlled. Because when it's just you and you're isolated, the only thing you have is you and your feelings and your thoughts. Like you have no sense of purpose about anything. You don't actually care about anything other than just your feelings, and like a hyper focus and a hypersensitivity to that. And that's why also to a certain degree, we're seeing all of this focus on, like I sent you guys today that Oreo advertisement on Twitter. That was a real thing where it was saying, look it up real quick. It's on the Facebook Messenger
I'll show them.
private chat or whatever.
Okay.
But it basically said something like, why are pronouns important?
Right.
Right. And it said, because
It said respect.
It's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Using and I mean, it's kind of like, in the South, right? We always grow up over here like you say yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am. It's a sign of respect to your elders, right? So like I can see that sort of type of logic being applied. Like it's a sign of respect. It's how you show respect, but it also shows the shifting of consciousness of how we identify respect and how we identify ourselves and each other and so forth. And but look at that. It's like, what is actual respect? Like, why do I respect Katie? I don't respect her because she's my wife. I don't respect her because she's the kid's mother. I respect her because of who she is.
Yeah.
Like, I don't respect my parents because of who they are. Not because I don't respect them because they're my parents. I don't not respect them because they're my parents. I respect them or don't based on who they are. So if you're a person who stands by what you say and stands for real principles that are actually real and best for all, then I respect that. So like with Katie, for example, what I respect, some of the things I respect about her is the fact that she's willing to change. Like when she sees something that's not best within herself, she'll change it even if it's not comfortable. She's willing to talk about things. She's willing to push through. She's willing to stand up and challenge me whenever I'm doing something that's not best, or I have a pattern that's not best. She's willing to say something about it, you know, and she's willing to put in the time and effort to give the environment that's best for me and for the kids and for herself. And I know I'm willing to do that. So it's like, I respect myself. I don't feel like I remember when I was a kid. So, you know, I grew up, my mom, I had long hair when I was a kid. I mean, like girl length hair, but it's like, you know, it was like the surfer kid look or some shit, you know, and I had like super blonde hair. I was a pretty cute looking kid. And my mom, you know, I even at one point did modeling for this.
You know what I think of when you talk about when your hair was long, like JP, Awaken with JP.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, kind of
Really?
like that. Yeah, like that. Yeah.
Oh,
Not
like
him,
that
but
length.
I just mean the hair. The hair.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I didn't have red hair.
No.
But yeah, like, yeah. So anyways, I had long blonde hair, like down to here, you know, or maybe like that. And anyways, I remember one time we went to this restaurant, and it was one of those like sit down restaurants, kind of like I guess have Applebee's or
Yeah.
Chili's, something like that.
Of
you know?
course.
I don't know if they still exist. But it was like one of those kind of places. Anyways, we went to the waitress, and I was like, I have my little brother with me. He was a little bit younger. He's like 2 years younger than me. And he didn't have long hair, right? At least I don't remember if he did. And I asked the waitress, I was like, hey, where's the restroom? Like, we need to go to the restroom. And she was like, oh, well, your restroom's over there, but your little brother's restroom is right there. And I remember being so upset and embarrassed within myself, you know, and I just like didn't do anything about it. I just took him to the restroom, right? We went to the restroom. But I remember being so embarrassed thinking this person thinks I'm a girl. And another story, we went to, I don't know if you'll have Fuddruckers, but it's like a hot dog hamburger place. It's really good. Actually, that place, I don't know if it still exists, but it's really good. They have like those hot dogs. They're like real thick, all beef, but like the bun is like this real, it's not like your typical like hot dog bun. It's like this real thick piece of like, almost like garlic toast. You know, it's like real thick and fluffy. You know what I'm talking about? They're so good. It's like a piece of bread that's like split. It's not like those really cheap. Yeah. Anyways, when you guys come down, they have this place called Freddy's here, which has the exact same kind of buns. They're so good.
Oh, okay.
But we've been going there a lot to get ice cream. But why did I bring that up? So anyways, we went to this Fuddruckers. It was for like a soccer team.
It's just you brought it up just to say Fuddruckers.
I just wanted to. This episode is brought to you by Fuddruckers. We're not sure if they still exist, but if they do, use discount code SELFPERFECTED at checkout. But anyways, I remember it was like a soccer team, you know, end of the year, like whatever. And I went up and placed, it was like you had to place your order individually, and I gave them my name and everything, and they call out your name, right? And I remember them saying, Camaro. Camaro. And I was like, are they talking about, I mean, I looked at my ticket, and I must have been like 9 or 10 or something, right? And it was like they had spelled it Camero. They didn't put the N on it. and I don't know if that's just because they didn't have enough letters on the thing, or if that's just how they spelled it, or they forgot to put the in, whatever the fucking reason was. I was so embarrassed. And I don't even think anyone else noticed. And I don't even think I thought anyone else noticed, but it was so embarrassing within myself for some reason that my name was mispronounced. It was like this form of embarrassment that I experienced, like, right? So I understand where people are coming from within it. But now within myself, something like that could happen. I don't care. You know what I mean? Like somebody could say like, ma'am, or whatever, and maybe now it's like, I don't look like a woman, so it doesn't bother me. But what I'm saying is I don't derive my sense of self-esteem from that, Yeah. But it's like my sense of self-esteem and self-respect is within, I apply myself within these principles.
Yeah.
I call out bullshit when I see it. I stand up for things that matter, stuff like that. I do what's best, even when it's difficult. So when you don't have that, what else do you have? And same thing as a man, we were talking about like brainwashing for men. Like, did you disrespect me, bro? Like, what, bro? Like, you want to fight? It's like, why are you in a conflict right now? What are you trying to prove? And I remember,
you didn't see the way he looked at me. Are you serious?
Hey, I remember this one time.
I've seen my friends get in fights over that.
I remember this one time I was with my girlfriend, my college girlfriend, and I was going to go to a soccer match for my little brother, I think. And so I was driving with my girlfriend, and we got to the place. And so for those of you who don't know, I was adopted by my dad. So my mom remarried, my parents got divorced, my mom remarried. I had a stepdad, he adopted me. Somehow my biological dad gave up parental rights. But at a certain point, when my parents got divorced, my new dad and mom, they got divorced, and I lived with my dad primarily. And he made a point to he already knew who my biological father was. It wasn't like one of these things where it's like, I didn't know I was adopted. It was just, my mom kind of cut him out of my life, my biological dad. My dad made it a point to like kind of include my biological father in my life. So I would go and visit him and stuff. So I knew who he was. I would spend time with my biological grandparents when I was younger. So anyways, I know who he was. That's relevant to the context of the story. So I went to this soccer match and we were pulling in the parking lot. And I remember it was like, there was a space that I could pull into and there was a truck waiting. And I like kind of zipped into the truck, to the space. And I wasn't doing it in a spiteful way. Like I knew that person was waiting. It was more like everyone's trying to get a spot because it's so crowded. But then when I pulled in and I got out, the guy who was waiting in the truck was really angry, right? And so it's just one of those like macho things of like, oh, fuck you, buddy, kind of thing, right? But what's really interesting about this memory is the added complexity to it was the guy was in a truck that was exactly like what my biological dad would drive. And he looked exactly like my biological. I mean, if you saw a picture of my dad, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's like, I've seen a million like guys in America like that. He's got like the goatee. He's got like, the hunting and fishing glasses, like the plaid shirt, that sort whatever. Like you'd be like, that guy looks like a carbon copy of like this other, like a million guys. Right. But it was like, I thought it was my dad. I literally thought it was him. So at first I was like, he was angry and I was like, haha. You know what I mean? Like I thought he was, I don't know why he was there because I wasn't going to see, I was there to see my half brother who was from my adopted dad. So it wouldn't even make sense that he was there, but it looked, I thought it was him. So I was kind of like, haha, like you're pointing, you're like, whatever. Yeah. It was like, that's how I thought at first. But then I realized like, wait, that guy's actually mad. It's not him. And then suddenly it switched into this like competition of like, oh, fuck you, kind of thing or whatever, like whatever, fuck off. Like I got it, whatever. But it's just like this unnecessary fucking conflict and competition that happens between men where it becomes like this disrespect thing. There's like this movie with what's that guy, Nick Cage, where he's like I'm talking about? It's Con Air. You ever seen Con Air? No. The reason he goes to prison to be on the Con Air plane was because he was like a Green Beret that came back from war, and the guy tried to grab his girlfriend or whatever, and he like killed the dude by like punching him or whatever, because his fists are a lethal weapon or whatever. But again, it's like this hyper aggressive, unnecessary thing. Plus, you add in all the alcohol and everything into the equation, and it's just like alcohol is probably the worst thing both for men and women because it highlights the worst parts about both. You know, like the hyper aggression in men and like you need to fight somebody. It's like if you were out there fighting your own demons within yourself, actually facing them and dealing with them, that's where all of your energy should be going to, not fighting another dude. Now, legitimately, if somebody was trying to attack your family physically because they're psycho, you should stand up and defend yourself. But that's not what's usually happening. Usually it starts as something that's totally unnecessary. You know, I saw this clip on Twitter the other day, or I think it was last night, and it was 2 Muslim women full on, what's that thing called that they were like the whole thing, right?
Niqab.
Okay.
Yeah, that one. And they even had like the
Wait.
face coverings and everything.
What
And they were
did you
like-
say, Asif?
Niqab.
Oh,
Right.
Maybe burqa.
like-
I don't know.
It's like one of the two, right? But they were like full on slap fighting with this other person. I don't know if it was a man or woman, but it was like in Britain, I think, wearing a face mask, right? And it was someone was pointing out the irony of it or something, you know. But it's like, I don't even know why I brought that up, but it just made me laugh. It just made me laugh, you know, because it's like now we're all wearing face masks fighting over who's the better culture, and it's just like it's such fucking bullshit.
yeah.
But if you're actually committed to principles and making a difference in the world, you don't care about stuff like that. You don't have time for that stuff, you know? And when it comes to the masks, the biggest thing about it, because everyone can argue about the health benefits this way, that way. It's like we're indoctrinating a generation of children into fearing the air that's around them.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if there's some effectiveness in the context of the mainstream idea of germ theory and science and everything, there's viruses all over everything all the time, like covering everything. It's not like something you can easily just block out with a mask. It's not because viruses aren't there. It's because they're everywhere. That's the reason why it's not effective. So the biggest thing you have to fear is your own fear within it, because it's when you are in a fear state, your immune system is suppressed. Also, when you're in fear, what is it saying? You're not here. You're not fully directing every aspect of your life. You see what I mean? So what does that imply? You're not providing any real value to this reality. You're just taking. That's why you're in fear, because at a certain level, you know, I'm not giving. I'm just here taking. So people like, oh, humanity is not a virus. Yeah, it is. Like, we are the actual plague on this earth. Just look at it practically. But the problem with that is the reason why people react to that statement is because they don't realize that human nature can change.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So
it's
the
like
solution is to remove ourselves.
Exactly. Same reason people reject original sin in religion. They're like, so anything you would say where you need to change, they're like, oh, how dare you? You're just like religion saying, you know, I'm bad and screwed up human nature and all this. Like, no, you need to be honest with yourself about where you're at, where we're at as a human species, but then also we can change it. It is possible to change. That's why we created this podcast, was to kind of share our own processes of changing with people who are doing this, so they could see like, oh, I can kind of short circuit my process. I don't have to figure that part out for myself. Or also you could just see that it's possible. Like you brought up, Mitch, that point of coming and seeing Katie and I with the kids and everything. There's going to be more people who see your example, even just you and Jess together as a couple, not even with kids yet, that are going to be like, oh, damn, it's possible to actually, you know, because like when you guys started with the point of doing an agreement for your relationship, I think probably a lot of people were probably like, that seems a little artificial, or that seems a little, you know, like, come on, like, where's the love? Where's the feeling? But you guys have a great time. I mean, it's like, okay, you didn't get into a relationship, and not you guys, but these other people didn't get into a relationship, and within months, you're like working together, cooperating, having fun. You've got your own house now. Like everything's going bam, 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 bam. Most people, they get into a relationship, and after a few months, it gets worse, not better.
Yeah.
Everyone knows this, you know, but what do you guys think in terms of what's some of the brainwashing that we as men experience? Because we talk a lot of times about the women. And I think the reason why sometimes we do that is because so many women are so fucking brainwashed And guess what? Where do both women and men come from?
Women.
They come from women. I mean, let's be honest about it. They come from women. Men
And this is a
don't.
point that I wanted to talk about is what Avery has mentioned in the past is women are born with an inherent purpose
Mm.
to have kids. It's like biologically they're wired where there's a ticking time clock and it's influencing every part of you, right? Where unconsciously, even though people who may not want to, be in a relationship or have kids, they may not realize how this is influencing them, their body. But it's like they're searching for a man, they're searching for sex or whatever the case may be, right? It's because there's a biological time clock on that. They're born with an inherent purpose. Versus men, think about it.
Well, it's a different purpose with men.
Right, but it's not inherent. Like you have to go create that for yourself. And what I'm saying is, if we look at the timeline of things, right? I'm not going to nail it down to a T, but I was just kind of putting the parts together throughout this. It's like there was a certain point where women were like, "Fuck this! Like I don't want to do this shit anymore," or whatever, and they started entering into the workforce, kicking men aside, right? And basically, it's like taking over their purpose. And what happens when men do that? It's like if a woman had free time, and I've seen this in my experience, and I've heard like research done about this, but just consider it for yourself and your self-honesty. It's like if a man has free time, they'll fucking just play video games all day, or like, you know what I mean? Like just go lock themselves in the basement and just do nothing kind of thing. You know, more likely to do that. It's a more masculine trait. Versus women are more likely to like go take a fucking walk. Like, I don't know, like just be more expressive, right? They'll find some project to do. They'll take some fucking, I don't know. But it's more likely that apart from the binge watching of Netflix, which would happen on both sides, it's like men will then go play video games. A woman's more likely to go, do something, right? They do better, clinically speaking, psychologically, clinically speaking. They do better with idle time. Okay. Now, you take a man, you remove their purpose because their purpose was to work, and now they can't find work because their competition just doubled, and they don't have tits and a nice ass, and you can't fuck them, like the boss can't fuck you, right? So you take all those subconscious, super powerful factors, and then it's like, now you don't stand a chance. Now you don't stand a chance. So you take that away, men become weak. They become totally fucking weak. And then they just start jerking off a bunch and watching a bunch of porn nowadays. And then, I'm hearing how, some women in my extended circle are like going on dates, and it's they're like this date was bad. I'm like what makes a bad date, right? Because you think of Mitchell, Drake, like if somebody went on a date with you guys, it would be fantastic, right? You guys can communicate, all that stuff. But it's like I'm thinking about it, and they were telling me about this date. It's like the guy was kind of weird, doesn't really know how to communicate, and at the end of it, they're just like, "Do you want to come upstairs?" Like, where do you get the balls for that? But it's because you guys see what I'm saying? It's like you do a terrible fucking job, and you're like,
and now you want to buy?
Exactly. You want this, right? So that's so funny. And so the point is, it's like they're watching so much porn, they can't fucking communicate. They're just jerking off all the time. So then they're just like, okay, so now's the part where it's like, like she's just gonna come upstairs and give me everything I want, right? That's how it works, right? I paid for the meal.
Yeah.
And so it's like
that. I think
aspects. Go ahead.
That's a part of like the brainwashing for men is to go and like fuck as many girls as possible and just live life like as a bachelor and just jet set around the world and never settle down. Just always just like always got something going on, always something that's like, yeah, this looks great. That's like, I know that was part of my programming for sure.
Yeah, same. And
whereas
you had similar programs for sure.
Yeah. Whereas now I'm more focused on like, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I want to jump into that stuff more in terms of what men are programmed to value. But just to finish that point, it's like, so then you have all these dumb, weak men who can't do anything and then just live at home their whole life, right? Not the whole life, but I'm saying it's like they get so caught. Like I'm such like a baby. I was born to be a little bitch because my mom made me into a little bitch. Because what Avery says it so perfectly. He says, angry women make weak men.
Mm-hmm.
Weak men make angry women.
Mhm.
So for those listening, to consider that for a moment. Angry women make weak men. Weak men make angry women. It's happening on a lateral level within relationship, but then it's also a generational level.
Mhm.
So if you have an angry woman mothering a child, it's like that child constantly is like being told they're like a like Drake, you got told to like don't be a pussy, right?
Don't be a little bitch.
Don't be a little bitch. Right? So it's like that aspect of things like, I have to be macho. And you know that's not who you are. So it just creates a bunch of bullshit inside of you. So that kind of, my mom was an angry mom, right? And so it created me as weak. And what I could see I would have created in a relationship is me being a little pushover and never really stepping up and providing structure, where I see my mom just yelling at my dad, like, just do something, like, just fucking fight me, please. Just do something. Just show me that you have something inside of you.
Mm.
And dad's just like he'll just laugh because he doesn't know what to do. Because his mom was just like, So that's how the angry mom creates the weak man, and the weak man just creates another angry mom, for example, or angry women, right? So it just goes back and forth down the line. That's why that's what we're here to do, to cut the cycle. But the point is, it's like then these same guys who are just throwing their life away, they want to get into a relationship. Everyone's so fucking lonely. So then just people get together, right? And then they get together and subconsciously, like the woman's like, I don't know if this guy's going to be able to provide. I don't know how long I want to stay with this fucking guy. Like they're weak. They don't have substance to them. They're not real, right? It's all subconscious, but really you're just like, you're in it, right? And what I was saying before, what I was relating the weak men, angry women thing was like, you have these like young men like us, right? Who just spend their whole time living in the basement or whatever, or just living in a room in a house with your mom. And you never actually take self-responsibility. You never get put out into the world and have to face like feeling like a little bitch and then overcoming that, pushing yourself to work because you need to. You always have mama to go back to. And it's the same because what I'm saying is where that comes from is like going through school. It's just handed to you. It's handed to you. You do great in school. Mama says, oh, baby, keep it up. Like all you have to do is focus on school. That's what I was told, right? I love you so much. You're so good at school. Thank you. Please keep going to school. And then I leave school. And my mom fucking is like not happy forever, right? Like deep down, she's like, one day you'll go back to school. Like
She's
even
like,
if you're making,
I still hate you, right?
it's like even if you're making, all this money and all that stuff, well, maybe one day you'll get your education, right? And the point is, it's like
Your education.
Right, exactly. Like, yes, that's what education is, of course.
You should go do one of those like online courses, like through Harvard, like some certificate.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Mom, I got a degree from Harvard.
Boom. It's like, right. What is an education for again? To get a job. It's like, okay, like I'm working, right? And I'm making money. Yeah, but it's just like, it's just good to have the paper. Oh, it's good to have the paper. Okay.
I was like, just in case things don't work out because I didn't prepare you to actually be able to take any responsibility.
It's so funny. Like, seriously, I'm telling this to my mom. I'm like, okay, so you tell me all the time that I'm like the smartest fucking kid. And every time you listen to me, your life gets better or whatever, all this stuff, but you're still trying to give me advice and you still don't trust that I'll be able to figure it out, but you're basically
dude, I was listening to the Joe Rogan Kanye podcast, right? And Kanye says, I have people all the time wanting to give me advice, adults wanting to give me advice. And I'm like the best person that I know. Like I'm the most successful person that I know. Why would I take advice from you? You're not even doing anything I want to do.
That's like on Twitter. Every time I see someone saying like, well, Trump should do this and this, I'm like, why the fuck would he listen to you?
Yeah.
You don't know anything. Like you couldn't do anything this person's doing. You're trying to give advice.
It's just, you don't know what a coyote is.
It's just people trying to give like their emotional resistance and trying to get you to comply with it. It's all it is. Just control.
And so basically going back to what I was saying is like, so you have women's inherent purpose. You have men that don't have purpose. So they try to find purpose. And now women are like, no, fuck that. I want that as my purpose. The men are like, okay, what do we do now? And then they're all fucking like, we're becoming these big losers, right? And then it's like, then you get into a relationship and it's like, how is that going to work? Because it's not to say that, okay, here's the truth. Men can be a fucking just as good or better in a lot of jobs that men do.
You mean women can be good or better?
Yeah, I don't know what I said. Women can be
I think you said
just as
men.
good or better. Yeah,
All right, okay.
be just as good or better than many jobs that men do, and vice versa. Men can also be good or better. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, it's like what we got brainwashed with is thinking that a job is like fulfilling. Like that's where you find your purpose. And it's like most of the time, all these women are just working for men. And on the times that it's when it's a woman working for another woman, it's like, you guys know what it's like when you're working for another dude. You're just like, fuck you. Like, I wish I was in your position at a job or
Mhm.
whatever, right? You're like, man, I work harder than you. Fuck you. You're an idiot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how'd you get there?
Mhm.
It's not, you know what I mean? It's like, if we had the option to just like finesse a girl where she loves us, and all we have to do is like please her and take care of shit, and that was our job, and we got paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it every year, or $50,000, where, you know, my partner's making 100K, so I get 50K and they get 50K. You know what I'm saying? It's like, fuck yeah, dude. But the point is, the problem, do you guys see what I'm saying with that? It's like,
Well, the way you
In
said
terms
it,
of
like
just being taken
finesse.
care of.
I think I fucked up how I said it. But the point is, like, if you could
But
just
the point is, it's not fulfilling, but it's
It's got security.
taken care of. Yeah, exactly.
exactly right. But the problem is, if the guy can't do that, then it's fucked. Like, I'm sure, like, Mitch, going through the process of being in a relationship, you're like, shit, dude, if I'm gonna have kids, then I gotta make way more money, right?
Mhm.
Like that's
Yeah.
what I'm feeling too. It's like, wow, I'm realizing that if I was in a job where I was at 40K, 50K, 60K, it's like I can't provide for my family on my own. I wouldn't be able to live this life where I could just give everything to Maylat. Like anything she wants, it's yours. You don't have to think about it. Whatever you fucking want, it's done. No problem. Right? Which is like, Cameron, what you were describing with Katie. It's like you guys are looking for a new property, and she's like, hey, like, do you want to check it out? And you're just like, well, do you like it? Cool, done. Like, you know, I want you to have everything you want. And so at the kernel of it, right, is women having an inherent purpose that they can choose or not. They have more option. They control life. Life comes through them. They create, like, they have inherently more drive because there's this clock that's ticking in them. So they're more likely to just keep going and going and going. Versus men will just regress really quickly and crumble into this like fucking potato life, right? So if you have women being like, oh, I want that purpose, and then they take that, it's like, then you have weak men getting into a relationship with women, and that's creating angry women. And then that's where things are crumbling. And that's where it's like, okay, I have to be able to provide for myself because he's not going to be able to provide for me. And I also don't fucking like him. So eventually I'm going to leave when I get bored. That's
You know,
the,
that point about angry women, I was just thinking about this because, like, obviously this has been going on for generations, right? But it doesn't even have to be like an angry expression, as in like, you know, yelling or loud or anything like that. It could be just a spiteful, angry at the husband, and then just being quiet about it, but being so angry. And you can see that that relationship's not working. You know, as a kid, you know, you're seeing this relationship not working, and then they're neither of them, neither the man or the woman, are there to provide for that child, to emotionally support them. And that's what we saw with, like, you know, the previous generation, where they were feeling like, you know, their dads weren't emotionally there or whatever, right? But it just continues on into this cycle of where we are at today. This is just the natural progression of it, and it's only going to get worse unless we do something about it, unless we actually change it, we actually stop it, we become aware of it, like we're explaining right now. That's cool to become aware of it, but then now you actually have to do something about it, because just being aware is not enough, you know.
and what you started talking about that Cameron wanted me to talk about, of somebody who's, you know, came to the clubhouse, and we're just seeing how as men mature, if they actually mature, what they value shifts, right? and it wasn't on the parenting call. It was just before we started this. It's exactly what you said, Drake. Is like I was programmed with that. I think me and you had very similar programming, but generally from men, it was like we all have this thing of like it's all about how many women can you fuck, how hard are they, and how many cultures of women could you fuck. You guys
Yeah,
have that too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
It's like
It's a
Not me
status
because
thing.
I'm white, so
Yeah,
it's more
yeah.
like pure Aryan race. But yeah,
yeah.
It's a status thing.
that's my
'Cause-
German genetics.
I'm part German too. So
what were you saying, Mitch?
it's a status thing, and I've noticed this a lot through doing the self-forgiveness writing and just building my self-awareness of going back to as a kid, like on the playground, like you want to be the first one picked on the team,
Right.
or you like want to win in the game in gym, like dodgeball or whatever. And so you are like, I am better than all you other motherfuckers here. So it's this whole
Yeah.
competition point. And then that morphs over time into like, who are the cool kids in high school who get the attention and get the women and all
Right.
that. And it's so baked into our culture, like through media, it's like everywhere. But what that turns into is people missing the fucking mark on what actually matters. Because like, okay, y'all know that idea of, oh, the person who like peaks early and like high school was like their glory years. And then they're just like, that was it. And then you see them on
Yeah, yeah,
Facebook now and they're like fat because they're drinking too much and stuff. And it's like, damn, like, okay. But, and it's not to judge them, but it's to just say like, that's just why we do this podcast and why we keep building this, because like there's a better way there's a best way to build culture and support each other and have friendships and relationships and all that. And so you see that with people
we had
like
we had a request, right? We had a request into the group where it was like, "What's your vision for your life?" You guys remember that?
yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Like,
I just want to fly around and fuck bitches.
Yeah.
Safe
At
to
least he was
say,
honest.
exactly. Safe to say he's not in the group, but
Yeah.
but if that's
Yeah.
what you're talking about. That's what we value.
But so that's that other thing too, though, like the brainwashing of men is this idea of the peak where you're like at the highest level of status and influence and whatever and confidence. Some people didn't hit that in high school and they still think like, oh, it's out there, I'm gonna hit it. But even if they hit it, their starting point is still fucked. They're like, I'm gonna be a billionaire. I will have a private jet, I will have a mansion in 3 places. It will be so cool. They don't even realize they are selling themselves out. They're not even selling their soul, because people don't even know what the soul is, but they're selling their life. They're literally enslaving their life to this image in their mind of, oh, I'm going to be a billionaire with a house in the Hollywood Hills and all that shit. And it's like, that is brainwashing at its finest, because it's men and it's taking our testosterone and our drive and our natural gifts that we're hardwired with and just plugging it into the system to just perpetuate more of the shit.
Especially because like their starting point within it is, I'm going to be a billionaire to show everyone else, to prove to everyone else like just how much better than they are,
Yeah.
than I am. Whatever.
Yeah. It's like that point of, it's like vindication where you're like, I will show them and I will show up and they'll regret that they ever made fun of me or whatever. It's so fucked.
That's also a cool point that is within both men and women, just competition. Like the men are competing with each other, and then the women are also trying to compete with the men and each other. And it's like, that is really what's separating all of us, is that we're all competing to the point where we're not even focused on working together as a team and where our strengths are. And so I think if we were all doing that objectively, then women would be able to see, hey, I have this role that I do much better than any man could, and men would take on their role of like, oh, here's how I can work and support that, which both supporting each other. It's not just one supporting the other, but both supporting each other to have the most effective lives and the most effective families, and then therefore create the most effective world, because it's the most effective society,
We got like so goofed on thinking that this thing that happens behind closed doors that you could literally just lie about of I've slept with so many women, that's what makes you cool. Like, you see how that has no, Mitch, you brought up such a good point. It's like this, the dominance hierarchy is what I had Jordan Peterson ringing through my head. It's the dominance hierarchy, right? It's the dominance hierarchy everywhere you go. And he talks about the crabs and all that stuff. He's like, they're looking to dominate. That's my best Jordan Peterson impression. Okay?
I was like, what is that?
That's
voice?
pretty
You
good.
didn't know that? That was good, man. Kermit the Frog. Did it sound like Kermit? If it did, then I did a great job. But it's like the whole alpha male, and I remember that like there was the wave of alpha male where it's like, yo, like how many bitches do you fuck? Are you a bro? All that. But then I started seeing the YouTube videos shifting it to like in a good way of like alpha male is just when you know what the fuck you're doing with your life and you pursue that. That's the most attractive thing, is when you set a purpose out for yourself and you are aggressive within your pursuit of it. And it's the thing that when I say as I think as a man matures, or as a boy matures into a man, it's like you realize the difference between just wanting to do things out of self-interest, and you shift that over time to like, what can I give to this world? And part of that is being able to build something of value, being able to stand as a set of virtues, right? And this is prevalent in religion, all different stuff. But what we're suggesting is the virtues that you should stand for are the fucking principles, if that's not obvious yet, right? And the way I think it's to some degree, every man wants to create like a building or a little country. Like it's just like this little
Some sort of
underlying
structure.
thing, some kind of like thing that they can, like a community that they're the leader of. But that's what a family is. It's like, it's the place where you can create it with your partner the way you want it. And depending on who you are, that's who your child is going to become. And what I think Cameron was talking about was how nowadays what's permeating the culture so much is that nobody wants to have kids anymore, right? And it's funny because Bill Gates, right? He made this YouTube video. It's on his channel. And I mentioned it before, but it's talking about how it's showing the growth of the population. And it's like, look, it's skyrocketing, right? But what we've noticed is that the rate of change is going down. So it's like it grew by 1% and then like 2% and then 3%. And then now it's kind of like 2%, 3%, 2.4, all that stuff. And then he said, I think Google's listening to me, one sec. I think the reason why, he says the reason why population growth is going down is because of health is getting better. Because health is getting so good, people want to have less kids. So the way we control the population and let that plateau is by just keep increasing health. What does Bill Gates when he means increase health?
Vaccines.
That's like his only hand in health, right? Why else would he be making the video? He's a really smart guy. He's doing it for money. But that's what he's saying. He's like, if we extrapolate this, then and we keep taking care of our health better and better and better, then the rate of increase will decline, and then the population will flatten out. But the real fucking reason is because we're so weak. We know we can't communicate effectively, and we know that if we have a kid, and when I'm saying we, I talk to a lot of people my age, and people in relationships, and who would, typically speaking, in a serious relationship, they'd be considering, okay, that person, I'm probably going to be with them forever. And like, are we going to have family, all that stuff? They're like, I don't want a family. I don't want the kids. And I always ask why, right? And if we've been talking for some time, they're just like, I know how I got fucked up. I don't want to fuck up my kids. I know this world, and I'm not going to bring a kid into this world. That's just selfish. All that stuff, right? Have you guys heard that before? It's like to have kid is such a selfish thing. And from a certain perspective, they're kind of right. Like the typical reason why somebody would have kids, it's just like, oh, it's just what you do. Like you just have kids and you kind of fuck them up and you just move on with your life. And there's the terrible twos and they become teenagers and they're assholes. And then you just go on with that. Right. But what we're showing, well, first you have to understand that your kids are going to be a direct reflection of you and your partner. And what we're showing is that if you lead your life by this particular set of instructions that you can put into yourself, if you have the right tools and the instructions are the principles, the output of living those principles is, take a look at Max and Seneca, right? And, you know, right now it's like, okay, that's like the only like great example of it right now, because it's a brand new thing that we're bringing into the world, right? But over time, you're going to start seeing this from, you know, my kids, Mitch's kids, Drake's kids, just the first wave, right? Like we were talking about off camera, right? But it's like, I understand why people don't want to have kids, because it's the subconscious acceptance of like, yeah, I'm pretty fucked up and I don't know how to change. So that's why if you're in that position, if all you care about is like, I just want to fuck, I just want to have sex with a bunch of dudes or a bunch of women, because I know women have taken on that personality too. It's like, it's all about sexual freedom. Like, let me fuck whoever I want, like, you know, whatever. That's still coming from a place of immaturity. Like you haven't realized that you're stuck in a pattern. Like Mitchell said, it's like you're kind of stuck in this high school pattern where maybe you were never the hot girl or you're never the hot guy, right? So now you want to be able to express that and all that stuff. And it plays into this, like, let me be dominant. And then men think women have it easier sexually and with work and all this stuff. So they become more spiteful and more, you know, weak. And then women are like, dude, men are assholes and they got it easy and all that stuff. And if you really just look at it as the humans are just becoming like dumber and dumber and less compatible and more separated. Right? Seriously, right? And so what we're saying is the only solution to that is, honestly, practically speaking, the only solution to that is plugging into Self-Perfected, so you can become aware of all the places where you fucked yourself over by thinking, oh, the only thing that's important is being like Drake said, living the jet life, right? Just flying around, fucking a bunch of women, or having sex with different men and traveling and not giving a shit about anything. It's like, what's the point of that? And I think that's what you're seeing, like energy, right? And it's like you're seeing two individuals like that getting into a relationship. They're like, yeah, this is fun, and I'll stay in this relationship so long as it's fun, right? But in terms of the brainwashing for men, what else do you guys see as parts of that? Like, how many men want to be entrepreneurs, but they don't have the wherewithal to actually do it?
Mm-hmm. Or they're just accepting and delaying.
I was talking with someone yesterday who we were talking about entrepreneurship and how, just, looking back in the history of America, you go back 150 years, even like outside of America, pretty much everywhere, go back 150 years, and everyone was an entrepreneur. Everyone had a mom and pop shop. You had the bakery down the street. You had, either this person
there
was
weren't
a cobbler.
Like mega corporations.
Right. There were no mega corporations. So everyone was taking care of themselves. And then you had these mega corporations come in and then just start taking over entire towns and cities, et cetera. And so all the mom and pops.
Industries.
Yeah. All the mom and pops went away and they had to get jobs. Whereas before, you could have your own shop. Obviously you had your responsibilities within that, but you had something that was taking care of you, and you could bring your children up within that and teach them the responsibilities of creating something that provides value. You had to actually provide value to your community in order to survive, in order to live, because that was the only way that, they're going to come and exchange goods with you or exchange money with you, and this person that I was talking to was just saying how they are working a corporate job, for this big mega corporation, and that's all they've ever done. It's like they can't see like, oh, it's kind of risky doing entrepreneurship. Like, yeah, it is. But and then they were thinking about like, well, I just watched this Netflix thing where they're talking about how mid-sized businesses, they have it really hard because they've got to provide for their employees. I'm like, don't have employees. Like make it so that everyone has the opportunity to be an entrepreneur, you know? But it's so outside of the realm of like mainstream right now.
Yeah. I'm going to say this, and well, the first thing I was initially going to say is like, it makes so much sense about the school system. I didn't read the book from John Taylor Gatto, but the one called The
So
Hidden.
have you seen that interview he did, that 4-hour thing?
Which one?
5-hour one?
No.
Or whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
I
like
got
his
it.
interview where he basically goes through pretty much everything in the book.
All the
Okay.
resources.
Okay. Cool.
All the major stuff. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah.
So even if you don't read the book, the interview is really good.
What Drake was just explaining, I was like, how would you get everybody to start just valuing jobs? There's out of necessity, right? But the other part of it is like the name, because the title of the book is The Hidden Curriculum of Mandatory Schooling, or some other word than mandatory.
Compulsory, yeah.
Compulsory schooling. Yeah, thank you. And it's like, it just makes sense. It's like, how do we get everybody to just not just want jobs, but only be able to do jobs, where if they tried to do anything else, they would fuck it up and then they'd have to get a job. Create the school system.
Think about this. I was just looking at this point. Why are there so many young guys now that want to be entrepreneurs?
Because they don't want to go to school.
Because women have taken over all the jobs.
Oh, that's a good point.
Women are
Oh.
better suited for university. And as a
Right.
man, you don't want to go into a corporation, because if you even look at a woman, which you know you will,
You're going to get fucking fired.
you're fucked. So it's
Man.
like, well, I want to be an entrepreneur. But that's why then you have all these, so many people I talk to, young guys, they're like doing digital marketing or something like that. And it's like, and it's always
You don't need to
they just started working with a digital marketing company where they're learning how to do everything, and then they're going to eventually have their own business, but right now they're just getting clients for that company or whatever it is, like some kind of pitch or whatever.
Huh.
And the first thing they always tell me is, your website really sucks.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I know, I don't want people to go to it.
Oh, and what I was going to say to accent what Cameron's saying, because I'm like, what, like, is that really it? But I just heard a statistic, I just heard it like a few days ago or maybe a week ago, and I think you guys heard it too. Of now there's more women in the workplace than men.
Mhm.
So it's exactly what you
Makes
just said.
sense though, right?
Because you're right. They have, out of personal experience and through the research that I saw, the women just have an easier time going through school because it's much easier for them to just, how do you describe that? To just look at what's available to them and just go with it. Right.
Mhm.
Versus a man is like, I don't know. I'm
It's
not going
kind
to
of
say
this
it.
weird paradox thing. Women have a better ability.
He's looking out the window.
I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. It's
I know,
like,
because I'm fucking it up. I'm screwing it up right now.
on the one hand, like men, they can turn off their emotions and they can get something done, but it's almost like we access our emotional drive more. But what I've noticed with women is like they can like turn off their emotions and just like stop caring and then just do something
know
they have
what?
to do. You know what I'm trying to say? It's like
yeah,
a
it's
different
like-
sort of thing.
It's like women accept you need to make money and they just get to the point of being able to do that. Versus a man, it's like, oh,
Have you ever, okay, hold on. Have you ever been in a relationship with a girl or a woman and then like it ends up falling apart and then like next day they're like totally done with you?
yeah, exactly.
And you're like,
exactly.
what? How could you just switch it off like that?
They
But
bounced
like
off
you're
of-
like totally like distraught for like a month or something. You know what I mean?
And again, that happens on all sides, but it's like
It does, yeah.
more likely to see that. And I know we're just saying they, but seriously, like if you consider this for yourself, but Avery said it in a really good way. He said, women, they grow up. they mature. Men, they have to be raised or they stay as boys.
Hmm.
Like girls mature into women,
So true.
but boys will remain like boys
How many men
unless you
today
train them.
do you know have like walls of figurines and shit?
Oh my God. I got to tell the
Like
story.
that's a totally normal thing now. Like when I was growing up, it was like my uncles were like that, but I thought they were just weird. But now it's like a totally
Yeah.
normal thing.
Dude, I'm telling you, what I was saying earlier is like, so it's one of Maylat's friends. She's saying how like she's dating, you know, she's seeing a couple guys and like she went on one date and she was like, it wasn't good. And then she just felt bad at the end. The guy was like, hey, you want to come upstairs? She's like, she didn't want to say no. She was driving. So she knew she was just going to leave. Like,
That's what the guy's counting on. Like
yeah,
they're just
exactly.
gonna be like, "Ah, okay,
Just the pity, right?
I'll let you put it in for a bit.
But I'm thinking of the guy. I'm like, who would have the balls to do that? It's because they actually think that women are just there to like fuck, like, you know, because of watching all the porn and stuff, right? And so she feels bad. She goes up and she just says his walls, the guy's walls, was just completely just Star Wars, figurine,
shit.
Star Wars. I'm like, oh my God, that still exists. But I think about it. I have another friend who is like, he's showing me his Legos and he's 24 or 25. He's older than me. He's like, look at my Lego things. Right?
My parents gave me shit because I still wanted to play with Legos when I was in 5th grade.
Grow up, little boy.
Because I asked for Legos for Christmas and they were like, you're not going to want to play with them next year. You're just not. I know it. We know you're not. And I was like, no, I really want them. They were right.
So it's like women will get to stability, I think, faster. They see that, okay, if I go to school, I'll get a job and I'll be good. My survival will be taken care of. Versus men have this like conscientiousness. Like I need to like, they all want to create a name for themselves, right? Like I want to pass on my name. I want to create a legacy and all that shit. And it's like, if they don't see that within school, or education, or whatever, they'll lose motivation.
Dude,
Versus
that's
what I
such a
see
cool point.
is
Sorry,
for
go ahead.
women is like, if they see it'll provide their survival, it's like they'll just, and I think that's what you were talking about is like they can put their emotions aside and focus on something. It's when they can see it's going to take care of their shit, which they're much better.
It's like they'll tend to focus on the security aspect. And
Exactly.
again, like you mentioned, there's like overlap both ways. I'm just looking at overall what
Like
I see, like what I
femininity.
see within myself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there is overlap because everything's so mixed up now. Right. But I see that. And you know, it's that point you made about legacy. I thought was really interesting because how many women do you know who give a fuck about a legacy?
I've heard that. Yeah. I've heard that.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm like, I never
Yeah.
thought about that before. Like, they don't care. I'm
They're
not
not
saying
like, I
there
wanna
can't
leave
be
my name.
one. I'm not saying there can't be any, but generally speaking, that's definitely not a feminine thing. Like, they give a fuck about, like their name on a statue or something.
Yeah, exactly. Versus a man is like, I want to have a fucking building in my name, and I want my kids to have like billions of dollars, access to them at all times. They have a trust that's just paying them out all that shit, right? I need to pass on a legacy. I always hear men say, I say, what do you want? They have no fucking idea what they want, but what they do know they want, I want to create a legacy. I want to create generational wealth. That's the hot shit now. Generational wealth. It's like, okay, how much do you make? It's like, I don't have a job. Like,
Well, I'm working at this I'm working at a digital marketing agency. And,
Right, exactly.
Just started.
By the way, your website's shit.
And so it's that point of men kind of being fucked in that regard where they have to be raised. As Avery says, boys have to be raised up. Women grow up, boys have to be raised up. And that's the problem right now. Is like you're having all these weak men who never raise their children, their boys, and they're just getting raised by women, which are making them really feminine, like me. And I'll be honest, a lot of the things that I'm saying about the women aspect of things, I'm really talking about femininity because I just saw this stuff within me. I saw all the points within myself where I'm like, I'm just seeking security. And within that, I would never have it. Like I would always just be trying to just get the base level kind of thing. So I had to like work myself out of that to be able to see that the only fucking real security is you being able to count on yourself that you can make a lot of money, which is building a business that automatically provides for you all the time.
Yeah. And if you aren't surrounded by people who are actually doing that from a real starting point, you're fucked.
Hmm.
Because you'll end up falling for the next YouTube ad, or you'll be like, oh, I don't watch YouTube ads. Okay. But you're still going to go do some stupid shit thinking it's going to make you money. And you're not actually developing yourself. So you can trust yourself and then do it all within principle. So that's brainwashing for men. How about for women?
I think guys have hit on that pretty hard.
He hit on it so hard it turned his video off.
Ian's giving a present at the office. He's going, what's up, guys?
Hey, it's a
I'll
kid.
watch the podcast later. You're going to hear yourself, buddy. See you later.
Yeah,
But
well, I think Mitch, or not Mitch, Jess did a really good job of talking about it previously. I think she could talk more too next time she's on. But I think that what I've noticed with Katie and I is like the desire for the female just to, it's like if the man's going to be weak, the woman will typically just focus on survival, security.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
we kind of mentioned it, but it's like, and then what'll happen is if the man is not taking full responsibility, the woman will always try to pull them to just doing what they want.
Mm.
And a lot of times men try to act, they always say this stuff like women will destroy you. And like, you know, like you always hear like this like whole thing where it's like, this guy's like, yeah, my ex-wife was a bitch, you know, and she just sucks the soul out of men. It's like, dude, you're just fucking weak. Like, and also maybe that person's very unstable, you know, like fine. But what I noticed is when the man is weak, meaning when they're allowing bullshit within themselves. And like you were talking about earlier, Mitch, that point of, you know, like imagine you had participated in that thought when Jess was cleaning up the stuff of, oh, I should be helping and stuff. And then it's like, you'll try to say something and then that'll like bring up some point within her. And then it would just turn into like a conflict somehow. So it's like not participating into that bullshit. But when you do, what I noticed is the woman's point of wanting security. It's like when they sense that weakness, it's like, I need to take control now. And I see that happening right now within the bigger picture of our society is like, because men are allowing themselves to be weak within everything. It's like, we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. Well, I don't want to, you know, whatever. Then women are like, we're just going to take control. We're just going to run everything. But the problem is when you're looking at the differences, you know, I think it was Asif made that good point about the corporation, like the different roles. There's a difference between the guy who starts the company and the person who manages it. You know what I mean? And typically, generally speaking, the person who's like the entrepreneur type who does it isn't necessarily the best manager, or they might still be running it, but they have really effective managers in place, let's say, or something. You know, you all these different examples. But generally speaking, the men are really good at the kind of just go out there, do that act that you have to do that's really fucking hard and like you don't want to do and like, you know, but you just got to get it done. Versus if you have to sit there and manage things, you just want to kill yourself. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to just sit there and manage stuff, but women are really good at that. And it's not to say that there isn't aspects of both. Women also can do that point of expanding, but like with Katie and I, it's like, she'll have an idea of like, hey, here's something I need done. Here's something I want. And I'll be like, okay, just tell me what you need. I'll go get it. I'll go make it happen. You know? And so it's like just very classic, go get the resources and then the woman can figure out what to do with them. And also the idea that we live in this kind of like structurally racist society, and it's all disadvantaged towards women and all this stuff. It's like, who spends all the money? Like really think about it. Who's the one who makes most of the purchasing decisions in a home?
Women.
Is the women. So the women are the really driving force behind the economy, behind all of these points. You know, and that doesn't mean it's about blaming women. I'm just saying it's a, what I see the whole feminism thing, especially like the Me Too and all that stuff, is with the exception of the times where a man really has crossed the line and like forced himself on someone, which is not acceptable. But the general point of like, you see a lot more cases where someone's taking something out of context and then they're using it to get rid of somebody. Like you guys saw the whole thing with Papa John, right?
Yeah.
Where he like apparently said the N-word, but it was like in the context of a a training on PR about things you shouldn't say, and he was saying that someone else got away with it and he would never do that, but it was in the context of a conversation. And then they took it out of context, ran the stories, and before the time the truth came out about it, he was already removed from the whole company and everything.
Wow.
So probably and I don't know if he didn't ever talk about this, but there was a point where the NFL, like Papa John said, they were going to stop running ads in the NFL when there was like the whole Colin Kaepernick and the kneeling and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking at that point, and when you listen to Papa John's, he wasn't against the kneeling. Actually, he wasn't like, oh, I don't think these guys should have the right to protest or anything. He was just like looking at the revenue and stuff and saying, you guys aren't pulling in the revenue anymore. Yeah. Like, you're going to have to change something, because we're not going to just put money into advertising when it's going to go down the drain. Right.
Which makes sense.
But it's almost like you're not going to play along with us. You're not going to go along. You're not going to accept. It's like we were talking about Kobe, right? Would Kobe have gone along with fucking wearing masks and everybody BLM on the courts and all that? I don't know. I mean, I'm not him, but I could see if anybody, even, because I haven't even seen one person really speak up, except that one dude who then ended up injuring his knee or whatever, right? Because he wouldn't kneel, which was kind of ironic, but but like if anybody that would be in there, or even if he wasn't playing at this point, like whatever it was, like it would be him. You know what I mean? But I could see it's just like no one's even standing up to it, right? So Papa John actually didn't stand up to it, but yeah, the big Papa, that's what I call him. Papa J sometimes, depending on how I'm feeling. Right. But and by the way, when I was eating like that kind of fast food pizza, hands down my favorite. So
really, Papa John?
Gotta say, loved it.
Yeah, with the garlic sauce.
It just their crust, everything. So this portion of the episode is sponsored by
Papa J.
Still around.
Papa J. No, but I really did like their pizza growing up. We always get it.
That's just too chewy, man.
So that's why it really hurt me whenever Papa John had to step down. It was funny though, because he did a really good interview with H3H3.
Yeah.
Right? And it was cool because you could see clearly they weren't really processing the whole point. Like they weren't really looking at both sides, but he gave a lot of really cool information in there. And it was like, he like came away out of that with like over $100 million or $300 million or something like that. He was like, look guys, I'm fine. He's like, that's not the issue here. He's like, I'm looking at all the franchise holders and everybody, because like what the management that took it over, what they wanted to do, he was like, is going to totally destroy everybody who had a franchise. Like they were just going to fuck everybody.
Wow.
So that's why he was fighting it. He's like, I'm good. He's like, I sold my stock. He's like, and I had to, because I know where it's going. He's like, it's obvious. He's like, but I'm good. It's not about me. He's like, I'm standing up because, so you just see like, if people are going to stand up to like bullshit, they'll be cut out. So how does that relate to like the Me Too and all that stuff? What I see is it's women getting a competitive advantage. Like they've entered a competitive space, which is the world of business. If you were a man in that competitive space and you could get a competitive advantage, wouldn't you? Like, why wouldn't you? In that competitive world, that businesses do it all the time. They're like cutthroat. So if a woman goes in there and then she puts on high heels and then a guy looks at her and then she says she's harassing him and how dare you? And then he's kicked out, like that can give them a competitive advantage. And Jordan Peterson had a really cool video I saw a few years back where he went through this whole point. It was like he was interviewed by Vice, and they were trying to do, this was like the beginning of the, so what you're saying is kind of thing, even before that other interview. And he was explaining, why do women put lipstick on their lips? Because it makes their lips look more like flush, like more red. And it's kind of like red is ripeness, like a fruit. It's all sexual stimulation symbolism, right? And why they wear high heels and skirts and all this stuff, right? And the guy was like, so basically what you're saying is then a woman should just allow herself to be raped if she wants to wear lipstick. And he's like, no. No.
I remember that. Yeah.
It's not what,
like,
what we're saying is like, why, huh?
He was like, where did you get that?
Right. Like, how did you get, but what he was saying is, why is a woman wearing lipstick then? If you're there and you're not there for any sexual, like, why should you ban people from being able to date each other in the office? Yeah. Isn't that a part of life? Like, You go to a work and you might find somebody that you want to be in a relationship with. How is that different than finding that at church or at a sporting club or whatever the fuck it is? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the difference? But suddenly it's like, nope, we got to all be business. Okay. So then stop wearing makeup. Everybody cut your hair the same way, wear a gray uniform, just like in fucking 1984, wear coveralls. You know what I mean? Like, then let's actually do it. But that wouldn't give women a competitive advantage, would they? Because nobody's going to look at, well, probably still would, but you know what I mean? My point is,
Less
even
likely.
when I was
Winston
in,
would.
huh?
Winston would.
Winston, yeah, there you go.
I said less
but-
likely. They're less likely to look.
But you know what I'm saying? The point is, it does give them a competitive advantage, actually. And I just sent y'all in the chat a little bit a while ago, in the Facebook chat, this exchange. I follow this guy named James Tadaro. He's a doctor. He was one of those. He was one of those doctors. What?
Yeah, one of in the group of doctors who
Yeah.
were who were speaking out against.
Yeah,
COVID.
yeah, about COVID and just all these different things, right? Like hydroxychloroquine, all this stuff. And anyways, he tweeted this article. I haven't read all the details of it yet. I just noticed it while we were talking. But he tweeted this article and was making some point in it. And the woman was retweeting him talking about her article. And she was saying how it was all this misinformation. And he was like, what specifically was misinformation that I said? And then somebody else said, unfortunately, he's well known for spreading misinformation. And then she started basically they did a back and forth. And she goes, if you had actually taken the time to read the article, it says this and this and this. And he was like, that's exactly what I said. So she misunderstood what he was saying, but she was actually agreeing with him. And then once he pointed that out, she was like, look, seriously, you're going to mansplain my article back to me? So here's the conversation. Okay. XYZ person comes along.
That's not the one.
Dude, don't fucking spread misinformation about what I said. I said XYZ. Yeah, that's what I said. How dare you mansplain what's in my article to me? What's in my article. It's but we agree. Now, and she said, and don't even try to make me look like the bad guy here just because you want to get away with spreading misinformation. Even though she also acknowledged, okay, yeah, what you said is true. And it's what? Now imagine that exchange and they're just two men. Where's the part where the guy goes, stop trying to mansplain?
I was thinking about that because I just saw some video of somebody shitting on somebody for mansplaining. And I was like, I do that to dudes all the time. And they never are they just say, dude, I get it. I said, okay, then we move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And it's I think about, so it just made this, she said this thing on the Lost Pal class of and women wonder why they get sexually assaulted in the workplace, as of a caricature of it, right? Almost. But it's at work. And I mean, even in a professional environment where I've only been there for 4 weeks and we're all in suits and stuff like that. Dudes were smacking each other in the nuts and in the ass and stuff like that. And all the fucking time. So it's if you want to be one of the boys or if you want to be equal to men, then don't get mad. Now, is that practical? No. If you hit a guy right here versus if you hit a girl right here, it's different, right? And so considering that, it's again, what I see the problem is it's on both sides. It's when men don't express masculinity and structure and leadership, the woman has to do that. It's pretty simple. If you can't make enough money to provide for two people, then both of you got to work. And the best analogy that I could think of, at least for myself, okay, is if on a soccer team, right, I play sevens aside. And in soccer, what's the position that everybody always wants to play?
I don't know.
Forward.
Cameron,
Center
you're
forward.
Yeah, exactly. Striker. Everybody wants to score the goals all the time, right? But it's if you have the option between you need a defender and you need a striker. Both of you can play striker. Only one of you can play defender.
that person has to play defender.
Why? Not if they only want what's best for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But if
best
they want
for the team.
exactly, if they want their team to win, then they'll have a fucking great time playing defense.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know that what you're doing is like bringing the team to victory, and you're like, fuck yeah. If I wasn't in this position, we would lose.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side of it is, yeah, maybe in striker, you're 80%, you guys are the same. But the other person has that extra 20%. Just a little bit more. They can take a little more bullshit. They're a little more hard body. They're a little tougher than you are. I'm a smaller guy, right? Maybe the other guy is more likely to just push people out of the fucking way and score. Just a little 20%. If we put ourselves in our best positions, we get the best expressions of ourselves. The thing that Jordan Peterson refers to plenty of times, I think he says in the Slavic countries, the hypothesis was that if you equalize the playing field across gender, you guys know what I'm talking about?
Scandinavian countries.
Scandinavian, thank you. The Scandinavian countries, if you equalize the playing field across the genders, you would think it's like you would have everybody doing everything. Women would be doing everything that men do plus what women do, and then men would be doing what women do plus what men do. But what they found was the opposite. Women went more into the feminine expression or classic feminine roles, and men went more into the masculine expression, the classic male roles. But if you think about it, right? Think about it like this, okay? In order to be good at soccer, you don't have to have a great free throw. You don't have to have huge arms to be able to shoot the ball 100 times all the time. In other words, there's a specific skill set in order to be good at soccer. Yeah. Right. In order to make money, there's a specific skill set that if you have it, you'll make a lot of money. If everybody is just focused on making money, of course, everybody's going to be basically the same. Of course, you're going to see a lot more overlap, right? And how people express themselves. It's like, because if you want to make a fuckload of money, you have to have great communication. You have to be ruthless in your pursuit of it. And you have to be like very one-track minded and obsessed to make a lot of money, right? But even to just do, like, let's say the basics, like to just get a good position and a good job, it's like you have to play a certain character. You need to play a certain role. When you don't have to do that anymore. If I'm not saying you have to play soccer and I say you can play whatever sport you want, then you're going to find the sport that you play best in. Like if I got forced to play basketball in the what's the guy under the net, the tall guy, the big man, what's his position called?
Center,
right? The center forward or center? Okay, cool.
Like Shaq.
Yeah, sure. Shaq. Yeah. Yao Ming, all those guys. It's like, if I was forced to play that position, I would get good at it. I'm athletic. But you put me, if you take me to the highest levels of the expression of that position, I couldn't compete. Why?
You're too short.
But I don't want to be too short.
Sorry, buddy.
Not fair. It's like, well, if you
then go do comedy like Kevin Hart.
Right. The point is, it's like, okay, if you force Kevin Hart to do that, then yeah, he's not going to be good, and he'll always just be fighting to change the rules of the game to make it down to his common level. It's like, okay, well, now all the other Yao Ming, Shaq, you guys have to play on your knees because that's the only way that we can have it fair. That's the only way we can have it fair. Everybody play on their fucking knees. Does that make any sense? No, it's like, let me choose the game I want to. You want to say, like Karen wants to jump in?
Did you? I'm sure. I don't know if you've seen it. That video from, I forget what that. Maybe Drake will know, where they're going around this college campus. Remember, and they're asking people like,
"Oh yeah,
would you accept it if I told you
I
identify as a 6'5" Asian woman?"
Yeah,
and it was like some short white guy, and they were like, "Well, I mean, hey man, like if that's how you feel," and he's like, "But I'm telling you, if I said I am." Not just like I feel like it. I am a 6'5" Asian woman. He was like, they're like, yeah, man, I think that's what, like they didn't want to say like
that's fucking weird.
They didn't want to say like, obviously you're not 6'5" and obviously you're not a woman. They were just like, Okay.
Yeah, man. if that's how you feel, man, power to you. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
but believe science.
Right.
But believe science. But I mean, isn't that the insanity that we're in?
Yeah.
You know, it's
Mhm.
funny. I was watching Trump's 60-minute thing, right? And it finally clicked for me. It's like they're saying, Trump, you don't believe science. Like, what's the deal? And then he's bringing up this point of, and they're like, you did a terrible job with the whole COVID shutdown thing. And one thing that I put together is like, if you believe science, then you believe the models that they set forth. 2.2 million people are going to die.
Yeah.
And by that accord, he did a fucking amazing
That's what
job,
I'm saying. Yeah. He did
Right?
great.
because there's less than 200,000 people that died, right?
And the 2 million was built into the even shutting it down.
Mhm.
It wasn't like, oh, only if we shut down we can prevent it. It was like, that's going to happen.
So
That
it's
was
like,
the fear.
if you believe in science, then you'd be like, oh shit, like he did an amazing job. He saved, 2 million people at least, according to the science. Is that what I'm saying? I don't fucking know. I don't
Yeah.
care. But just the logic of it. It's like, oh man. And then so I see how
But people only talk about logic
the double
again
thing.
when it's a competitive advantage.
right.
Mhm.
When I can say that and then that makes you feel ashamed, like, well, I don't want people to think I don't believe in science. Dude, fuck science. There's no such thing. It's not real. It's just a bunch of specialized vocabulary. It's like when you say you believe science, what does that mean? You actually have read every fucking scientific study on the subject? Or you're saying you believe the person with the lab coat who says they may have read it? What you're really saying is you believe authority figures. You don't actually trust science itself. Because even science like doesn't even know what reality is. Think about it. They don't even know, is quantum mechanics even real? I mean, we think so. I'm not really sure exactly what it is. Like, are there multiple parallel dimensions? I don't know. Like, maybe there are. It doesn't fucking know. It can't
Yeah.
explain even the most basic, simple things. But then again, it's only when it's to your competitive advantage in an argument if you can use it to make the other person feel ashamed. So it's like, as a man, if I say, or as a woman, if you say to the man, stop mansplaining, what you're trying to do is to get them feel ashamed, like, oh, I'm stepping out of line here. I'm not supposed to be mean to this woman.
Yeah.
But if men and women were equal, there would be no such, and if equal in terms of there's no difference is what I mean, then there would be no, what does it fucking matter if you mansplain? I just made a comment on that thread where she said, oh, now you're mansplaining me. I said, how do you even know
But isn't that adhering to gender roles?
Right.
Do
Well,
you
that's why I
believe
said, how do
mansplaining?
you even know what gender Dr. Todaro identifies as?
Right.
But seriously, how do you know?
Shit.
Like, according to your own rules, where mansplaining is a thing, in that
Yeah.
universe, you aren't supposed to assume someone's gender also. So in another sense, if this guy misgendered somebody, they'd get all fucking crazy about it. But it's
Yeah.
only because he's on the other side of the argument. It's not because there's actually value in the thing itself. Because
That was like, Cameron, when you had posted those videos or those images about the drag queen thing where the drag queens are reading to kids.
the drag queen story hour, yeah.
Yeah, and so I reposted one, and so many people got so up in arms about it. It was fascinating to just see it firsthand, and people be like, what is this hate speech? Why are you promoting hate? And then literally in the next comment, the same lady goes, "Fuck y'all haters. I'm all about love."
Clearly.
Need I say more?
Also, they cared more about the feelings of this grown-ass hairy man with
Yes.
pantyhose on and what was the psychological impact on these children.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of
Yeah.
these dudes was like dressed up in some fucking like almost like a demon costume. And I mean, it looked insane.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
I remember what you said.
yeah.
And then you have the parents
like
are not
fucking
even giving the
scary.
context as to what's going on.
Yeah.
They're more like, imagine that scenario. You're a child and you're kind of like uncomfortable. Dude, I remember I used to get babysat by my Uncle Tommy. And one day he came over and he had shaved his mustache off. And I flipped the fuck out. Like when I was like 4 years old.
Mhm.
Because I'm like, who the fuck is this guy? I was like, I don't want to stay here. Like, just something little like that, just because like when you're little, you're still learning facial recognition and so forth, so like that's a different person. You don't fucking understand what's going on.
Well, now we got
So-
masks for that to fuck them up even more.
See, but
Everybody will be
why-
Uncle Tommy.
That's what I was saying earlier, is like the masks are a big deal because from that aspect alone, you're fucking with children's psychology.
It's probably more easy to kidnap kids now.
That too, right? Because you can't even identify the kid because they're wearing a mask.
Oh,
But it's
fuck.
funny because I saw like at this place we went to this weekend, this like big dirt hill where the kids were playing on it, and there's a bunch of kids there, and like these kids had masks on, and they were like yelling for their mom, but you couldn't even see their face. They're just like, "Hey, mom,
Like, who's
mom."
yelling? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like,
Everyone's mom.
and the mom comes running up with a mask on. He's like, and I'm like, what the fuck?
Going back to what we
Outside.
were saying before about how.
Oh yeah, this was all outside, by the way.
Right. Yeah. True.
It's funny because Katie, real quick, Katie, there's some guy over there, and she goes, she looks at me and she goes, "What would you call a man?" She's like, "What would you have to be in as a man to be wearing a mask outside?" And I was like, "Yeah, seriously." And it's funny because we got home that night, and I looked on Twitter, and Paul Joseph Watson had made a tweet that said, "What do you call a man who wears a mask outside when it's not mandatory?" I'm like, "Yeah, exactly." Right? Because seriously, I mean, again, I understand the context of you're going to a place. If you want to go in there, they will not allow you to come in if you don't wear a mask. You don't have a choice. Like, I mean, you could just choose not to go in. That's one thing. You could choose to just not wear it and potentially be kicked out and deal with the consequences. You have to go to the grocery store potentially, right? I understand that context. So it's not about trying to be a rebel, like that's going to fucking change anything. But at the same time, some of these situations, it's like I went to see, we got a new accountant, and I went to go visit him in the office for the first time the other day. And I sat down, and like when I went in the office, I wasn't wearing a mask. I didn't even have one with me. When I went to the office, the secretary was wearing one. And then he came out from his office because I guess he heard me come in, and he came out to greet me, and he was wearing a mask. He asked me to come into his office. I sat down in the chair, in his desk, and he sits down and he looks at me and he goes, huh. And he takes his mask off and he's like, "Oh, I'm really glad you're not wearing that." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." I'm like, that's a good sign. Like right off the bat, right? So my point is, like, sometimes you can, just by you standing up a little bit, other people will realize like you don't have to do something, or it's like, okay, you're giving me permission or whatever. And I'm sure from his perspective, he doesn't know who's going to come in there. He could lose a client. So I get the pressure that people have, with the whole thing or whatever.
Mhm.
But it's like, you have to just look for yourself, common sense. That's why I'm not telling people you should not do it whatsoever. There may be some context where you have to, but generally speaking,
But you'd have to be able to stand stably within that, because the first, it's fear, and the only solution to that would be education. Like, you'd have to be certain within yourself why this is all happening. Why?
oh yeah, for sure. Like if you have any doubts or you actually feel like, oh, I'm putting people's lives at risk or something, then yeah, you're gonna.
You got to get educated.
The problem right now I see with this whole discussion is you're not even allowed to have a discussion about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There's
Exactly.
only one opinion you're allowed to have. And you know what? It's not even clear what that opinion is.
Yeah.
That's
You only
true.
know when you're on the wrong side of it, and then you're not allowed to say it. And then you find out.
Yeah.
And then next week, it could be the opinion that's okay to have.
Exactly.
Like this is really happening, guys. Like
Yeah.
this, it's funny because when I read 1984 when I was in 6th grade for the first time. I got it as a gift from my stepsister's dad, who was an English teacher, high school English teacher. He gave me a copy of it because he knew I liked to read. I read the book and I was like, wow, this is crazy. Like it just,
Shout out that teacher.
I didn't really understand all of it because I was only in 6th grade, I got some of it, but I read that book over and over, like until the cover came off of it. Right.
Hmm.
But even the first time I read it, I was like, wow, this is kind of crazy. Like, can you imagine a world like that? And now you look at it and you're like, it is that way.
It's not how you imagined it. And I can imagine how many people have read that book, but aren't putting 2 and 2 together. It's just like Drake, when you talked about the Booker T. Washington book,
Mhm.
when you read it, you're like, oh my God, I see it all so clearly about how what we're doing now is exactly the same thing. And you were saying, but I bet, because I think I said, I'm like, man, people need to read this book or something like that. Or maybe you're just
Yeah.
bringing up that point and you're
Yeah.
like, dude, I know that's everybody can
90%.
read this book, they're not going to connect the dots.
Yeah.
No.
They're not going to realize that that's what's happening right now.
And
But,
in
you know,
school, oh, go ahead, Drake.
We were talking about this point. I think I don't remember when we were talking about this point. We were talking about this point of like the Bible being self-referencing. Probably different podcast, right?
It's like a Kanye song, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
How so?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So like a Kanye song will reference another song and reference his own songs in the past, right?
Right.
But that's also how the neural network works, right? Where it's self-referencing
Ah.
and it's always connecting back to these other points within what you've already established. But if there's
That's what I'm saying
corruption
about
in
the
that
social
first
media.
level, yeah. Let me just finish this point. If there's
Yeah.
corruption in that first level, then you have a problem with everything else going back and connecting to those levels, and then it's just fucking up the entire program that you're running. It's not functioning the way that you want it to. You're like, I don't know why I put in this variable that I've gotten over here. If you're doing math, that's exactly how math works. Oh shit.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. If you're doing math and you've messed up one of the early variables, every time you go to plug it in, it's just going to fuck up your entire equation. You're not going to get the correct solution. And that's what we're experiencing on a mass level, you know?
Well, even with the math example, when you're studying calculus in high school, but your foundation from elementary is not strong,
Yeah.
it just won't make sense. Like someone can explain it totally perfectly clearly, and you still are like, yeah, but just tell me what to write here, because
Yeah.
there's just so much context.
Mhm.
And I've seen that, when I would primarily be just tutoring, like I used to tutor like full time.
Yeah.
I got so much exposure to different students and all the different personalities and how they responded to the material and everything. And I could just see the number one factor every time was every little piece building up to that wasn't totally clear. So if even when the one little thing wasn't clear, it's like
Dude,
just too much to process.
I see that so much, especially like with just, well, my point on like addition, right? But like just adding negative numbers, like there's so much within addition, but adding negative numbers, if you fuck that up, you're fucked for everything, It's just like everything becomes like, wait, so is this a positive number or a negative number? Do I add them together or do I subtract them? It's like, come on, this is really simple. But if you don't have that down, it messes up everything. And that's what a lot of people are experiencing, is just something as simple as that, which needs to be explained clearly. Think of how many kids, who was I talking to? Was it yesterday? I think John.
Mhm.
We were talking about like people say they don't believe in magic, but they don't know how things work around them. They don't know how their TV works. Meaning,
Right.
in essence, they do believe in magic because they have no fucking clue how anything operates. And it's just kind of like, it just happens,
Mhm.
right? And think of how many kids, like, and why is that the case? Because how many times as a kid you were just told that's just the way it is, no explanation. And so, and he also brought up this cool point of like, if you went to public school, I'm not arguing with you because you don't know how to research, but
know
it's
what?
a
I
really
was
great
looking at
point.
I was looking
Right?
at that, how the way we're programmed to not plagiarize. It's like if you use the exact words without quotes, and the way you're supposed to do it is you just take the exact same thought or idea and just change the words around. And then you think, and then everybody says, okay, that's your idea now. It's like, that's what we do. We take the information from the media, we repeat it to ourselves in our own words, and then now it's like my opinion. Like, no, it's fucking not.
Yeah.
Right.
I wanted to share this thing real quick. When I was talking with Max last night, because you brought up that point about how TVs work and all this stuff. And I was reading this book to him. We have these new books, we bought them. And one of them is called like something about bugs. It's like a book about bugs. It's different. Each set of pages is like a different type of bug, like caterpillars, butterflies, praying mantises, whatever. And there's one section he really likes called pond bugs. It's like bugs that are, so it's like, it shows like water, and it shows below the water. There's like snails that live underwater. There's these back swimmers. And then there's these other bugs. It's like the back swimmers, they're like on their back and they have these really long legs, and it's like shows them kind of going like this. And then there's these other bugs that are not on their back, but I just assumed they were because they sort of have like those same kind of long back legs. And there's a few different bugs in there. And two things kind of stood out from that. One, when we were looking at it last night, he points at those other bugs and he goes, Cam, what do you think those bugs are? Because there was like a description of each of the bugs except those bugs. And he's like, what do you think those bugs are? And I was like, I don't know. I'm not really quite sure. I think maybe I think they're probably their back swimmers. I mean, I know they're not on their back, but maybe they're just right side up or something. And he goes, yeah, but their antennas look different. And I looked at him like, oh shit. Cause like the back swimmers, it's like their antennas were coming from here, but those other bugs, it looked almost more like they were coming from like right here. And it was a subtle difference. But if you looked at all the different ones, there was a consistent point between the back swimmers and these bugs. And I'm like, yeah, okay. I mean, it does. They actually, and I started looking at, they do have some slight differences in the way they drew them, right? But what was really interesting is there's these bugs called water scorpions, and they have a couple of them drawn on there. And it's like they're under the water, but they have this tube that comes out like basically like their butt, and it sticks out of the water into the air, right? I know Asif's like, tell me more about this.
Nice.
I see you raising your eyebrows. But that tube sticks up, and I guess that's how they like get air or something like that, right? And he thinks that's really interesting. And oh no, why did I bring that up? Okay, I just remember why. It was the other guys. I just remembered. It was the antenna thing. That's what it was. Because when he brought up the antennas, I pointed out. I said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but he said something kind of like, "Why do the bugs have antennas?" That's what it was. Because they were underwater, and I was like, "Well, probably so they can get information about what's going on under the water." Like I said I don't know exactly why. I don't know. Maybe their antennas only work when they're out of the water. But maybe they can like, sense the other bugs, like they can hear them or something with it. And he was like, how do they do that? It's like, so it's like our ears. And I was like, well, it's not exactly the same thing, but I guess it's probably similar because, like the antenna, it's like they can pick up vibrations, right? And he goes, so it's kind of like our cell phones, right? He's like, so there's like antennas kind of like our cell phones. And I was like, well, it's kind of like that. I said, but the word antenna has different contexts. So we talk about antennas like on a radio or like our cell phone has an antenna in it, but also the receivers on a bug, they call those antennas because it can pick up vibrations from the air. And he's like, oh, just like the antennas on our phone pick up vibrations in the air. I'm like, yeah, exactly. So it's like we were talking about this point, and he just turned 4 yesterday, right? Well, from the time of recording this, right? And that's the kind of conversation we're having. And it's not just me talking at him. He's like bringing information up that he knew about or that we talked about in the past. And so, to your point about the negative numbers and all that stuff, he's still in the process of really fully integrating it or being able to express it like this. But generally speaking, you can't trip him up. Like if you say, what's 3 minus 4? He's not going to go 1. No way. He'll be like, it'd be -1. And then if you ask him why, he'll tell you because the 3 minus the 4, like he understands that. So he doesn't have to think about it. I mean, he might have to think a little bit. What I'm saying is he doesn't have to question himself. He doesn't have any doubt. He might have to take some time to make sure he gets it right, but he's not like, if I do a negative and a positive, do I do this? Or it's like what I've seen that with older kids, even in high school. And you see it too, they just don't even know. They're still guessing.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is with Max, if you ask him what's going on in here, is he can see the number line. You know what I mean? Like he knows it. So he understands where the 3 is and the 4 is versus a negative and so forth. So it's like when I am explaining it to a student, I know a lot of different ways of looking at the information. It's not just a memorization of negative plus negative equals negative. It's like I can visualize it in different ways. I understand why it is that way. But that's not what you see with students, typically speaking, in school. They've just memorized the information. And I always would tell my students, I would say like, okay, it's okay to memorize it, but I'm going to explain to you why. And the reason why is because if you only memorize it, you don't understand why, then when you're under pressure on a test, are you going to be able to trust your memory only? Because what if you go, wait, is it this way or is it that way? Like, how will you be able to work it out?
Yeah.
You need to understand why, so you can go, wait, okay, hold on. It's like this because, okay, that makes sense. So that might take you a little bit longer, but at least you understand. And then once you understand it, then you can just do the process of memorizing. That's good. It's good to have it integrated where you don't have to think about it.
Yeah.
Right. But the point being that students, they don't understand at all what they're talking about. They just immediately go to that. And then when you get to something like calculus, I mean, shit, you need to have that memorized. Like when I say memorized, I mean, you need to have it integrated where it's automatic. Otherwise, there's no way you're going to be able to deal with but it's not just that. It's every other aspect of the context in which calculus is applicable. You know, like there's so many concepts in, for example, calculus. And I use calculus as an example because that's like the math everyone thinks is really hard for some reason, right? There's so many different concepts within it that you need to have context to understand. And the average person has very little context. Like you were saying, Drake, they don't understand how things work. So they're not connecting any dots to anything. It's like everything is almost like an isolated thing to memorize. And then you come out of school, like you were saying earlier, Asif, like you come out of school and like you don't know anything. All you know how to do is to kind of pretend like you can speak as if you know about something, even though you don't really know what you're talking about.
Man, that's it. I think the coolest thing that I realized over time with TechnoTutor, I said this on something else, was like realizing that when I started critically thinking, I realized that I never critically thunk before in my life. Like when I started looking at information and coming up with my own conclusion, this whole time before, I would say a conclusion and think that it's my own, but really I just got it from something.
See, but can you go into that? What do you, because obviously you're still not coming up with your own conclusions, like
Right.
No one, but what to you is the difference between a conclusion you just took from somebody else versus a conclusion that you might have gotten from somebody else, but that becomes your own conclusion? Like really, like how would you make sense of the difference between those?
I can't tell if you're glitching or
No, I'm just trying to figure out how to put it into words.
No, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
And it is tricky to explain it with the proper vocabulary if people don't, because it took me time to understand like how the fuck does this all work, right? And processing ability, right? But it's exactly what that whoever Drake was talking to that said that if I know you went to public school, I won't argue with you. It's such a cool statement, right? It's like, because I know that the way you got trained to debate is like, you don't even, I remember this. I remember this in being in grade 12. You're just supposed to, they give you a side for a debate. We're going to do debates now. This is debate side. Do you remember this, Mitch? Did you do this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I was like, fuck this.
But it's like they give you the topic and they say you're for, and then you're against.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you think. But
It's like, how about I just figure out what's the actual correct one and argue for that? What the fuck?
Exactly.
It's like, no, but you might be on the Democrat side one year and you're going to have to argue their talking points. Like, what? Why the fuck would I be doing that? Like,
Exactly.
that's the truth. Like, well, but one day you're going to work for McDonald's and then next month you might work for Burger King. So you're going to have to talk about why McDonald's is shit then. And you're like, what the fuck? There's no principle.
you have to
Anyways.
understand that at one point they're going to say that you shouldn't wear masks and it's dumb to wear masks. Like, you should
The point is, maybe you should.
Yeah, why isn't that?
But then the next week, you're going to have to be able to convince yourself that wearing masks is the only way to go.
They're training you for doublethink. That's what it is right there.
Man, and that's one of the things that I wanted to mention before we talk about processing ability real quick. It's like, that's what Maylat was realizing. The reason why she's cool is exactly what you said. I don't remember if you said it here when we were talking about respect. I don't know if that was on this or the parenting.
Yeah,
call.
we just were.
Okay, cool.
Okay. We're doing
What?
like 5 meetings in a row. So
Yeah, exactly.
Are we talking about this meeting?
But you were saying what you respect in Katie is like when she needs to change, she changes. But what I respect about Maylat is like, even if it's really hard and it goes against her entire fucking life, everything that she believed up to this point, she'll be honest. She'll just be honest with herself and then with me. Even if it goes through some friction, then she's like, man, I realized this. And what she was realizing, what I said at the beginning is like, she's like, wow, I'm I'm totally down for gender roles when it benefits me. Because if you're feminist, it's like, fuck the gender roles. Like, you know, we're equal, right? We're the same.
Until a man tries to explain something to you.
Right, exactly. Then it's mansplaining, and then but
Yeah.
that's exactly what she's saying. She's like, it was in a funny context because she was like, you know, it's funny, like I realize I'm for gender roles when it benefits me. She was like, for example, making decisions. She's like, I just want you to make the decision about where to go to eat or whatever it is. She's like, I don't want to have to make that decision. She's like the little funny things, right?
Yeah.
And she was like also acknowledging it on a you know the different levels of that. And so it's like it's exactly what you're saying. It's like we all fucking do that. And the interesting thing is what I noticed that you do, Cameron, from way back when that I started doing is you'll argue for a side of something just to show people that they're wrong. And then when they're like, oh, so you just believe that Trump is perfect or what, you know, whatever the other side is. And you're like, no, I don't believe that either. Because you have the ability to take both sides, look at what's good in both of them, look at what's dumb in both of them, and then take what's best. Right. And so it's kind of like the opposite of doublethink.
Yeah.
Or it is doublethink, but using it in a very, very practical way. You guys see that? It's like you'll fight both sides to show that polarity or picking sides is dumb. And it's really cool because Sinessa on the Self-Perfected group, she was talking about that point of like, how do I, you know, I'm a really opinionated person. How do I bring that up to my family and things like that? And I was being particularly challenging because I know that she's strong. Like I know that she can handle it. Right. And I was saying, if you're holding on to your opinions, that's dumb. I used to do that. Right. But there's no point in holding on to opinions because by definition, it's based off basically lack of information, right? Incomplete information. And she took it like, she was like, okay, keep going. Like explain this more. It was really cool. She took it really well. But the point is like, there's not actual value in trying to pick a side and then stick to it like we're taught. And coming back to what Cameron was talking about. So that's the doublethink point. And using, we go through our library of opinions and then pick the one that like will make other people feel dumb and make us feel special in the moment. And then we put that back up and then we choose the other side, the exact opposite side for the same feeling, right? And then the only way to be able to recognize that in yourself, the only way to be able to connect the dots of, Cameron, what you were originally talking about that I cut you off in was that you had read 1984 cover to cover until it was falling apart. And I was saying that, or maybe you finished the point, but I was saying that how many people have read that book and probably don't even realize it's like, that's exactly what's happening. How many people even realize what doublethink is in the context of this situation, this world, this life, right? That's processing ability. What Drake was talking about why you shouldn't argue with somebody who went to public school and is not actively questioning, who's not applying these tools, basically. It's because they don't have the ability to actually process something unless it makes them emotional, unless it's like emotionally the right thing to do. Like the whole political correctness. It's like,
they still can't process that. They don't know why it's making them emotional or why it fits into their emotional bias at this time or not.
As in
They
getting
just know
emotional is the lack of
does.
processing.
Yeah.
Right. But it's
Yeah.
like, that's the only way that we make decisions anymore. So that's why it's so easy to do the political correctness thing. And you could say like, this thing is the right thing. Everybody believe in it because if you're not, you're a fucking asshole and your friends should all like not be your friends anymore. And everyone's like, oh, fuck. Okay. And then a month later, you can say, this is the thing that you should never say ever. And if you say it, you're the worst human being. And everyone's like, oh, fuck. Okay, cool. Got it. But no one's being like, like Karen was saying, you can't even bring up the other side. You can't even bring it up. That's crazy. That's like being in a relationship with man and woman. And I went through this. It's like you're too afraid to say anything to your partner because you're afraid of how they're going to react. That's what being a woman is. Generally speaking, it's like they're there to make sure that everybody's happy and everybody's cool and at ease. If you're feeling bad, they're like what's wrong, you know? And sorry, that's feminine, not women. This is feminine. Everybody does that, right? But it's like, am I there to emotionally make you feel better, console you? Or am I there to make sure you're emotionally good, like make sure you're not hurt or you're stable, and then be like, tell you the truth, whatever the truth is. And sometimes the truth is you're the fucking problem. Like if you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to keep getting the same bullshit in your life. It's like, that's why I respect Cameron. That's why I respect Drake. That's why I respect Mitchell. And that's the coolest thing about it is you don't judge or base your respect on Drake is calling me Mr. Nazar Ali instead of Asif. And he's calling me by, he. So that's why he deserves my respect. And that's him showing he respects me. It's like, no, he has character.
I think I call everyone in our group a bitch more often than anything else. But I respect all of you.
Right.
Exactly. You know what's funny? People would take offense at that term because it's like derogatory towards women or whatever. But it's like, what does it really mean?
Female dog.
No, but what does it mean when you say it?
Oh, like you're acting weak, yeah.
You're
Right,
like
so-
emotional.
It means like you're compromising. You know what I mean? You're not standing within what would actually be best. You're just being weak. So it's like, what does that have to do with being a woman? You see what I mean? So people might take offense and be like, that's mean to women or whatever to say that, because like you're associating being a woman with that, and it's like that's just not what it means. You see what I mean? Like, what do you actually intend? What's the intention behind it?
Yeah.
I was looking at the whole pronoun thing. Somebody was asking me earlier on Facebook, or I think it was yesterday, and I forget what it was I was posting. I think it was that Oreo thing, actually. We already talked about it. But they said, do you guys remember that meme back, it was probably a few years ago, where that transgender guy like went into that shop, and then they were like, he was like trying to buy something, and they called him sir instead of ma'am.
Yeah.
And he was like, it's ma'am. Do you remember that?
Isn't like a GameStop or something? Like
It was like a GameStop, right? So
Yeah.
I want a shirt that says it's man, but it's like MA''AN. I want to get like a shirt like that. But the real point is, like, what I noticed is people who are focused on that, they're actually just mentally unstable. It doesn't actually matter. You could get every fucking pronoun perfect, right? Like, they're just teetering on the edge of instability. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just like ready to like fall apart. It's not about respect. It's about, I'm just looking for something to set me off,
And that's what we talk about with the brick walls, right? It's the way I describe the brick wall, right? Is you have your missing bricks, your cracks, your crumbled bricks, and I always focus on the cracks because that can really clear people. A crumbled brick is a word that you have an emotional charge with, right? And what I tell people is take your hands, go like this, right here. This is your brick wall, right? You have your missing bricks, your crumbled bricks, your cracked bricks. And if I could sum up the world concisely, all everyone is trying to do is protect you from poking at my crumbled bricks. And rather than fix my crumbled bricks, if you poke at them, I say, you fucking asshole, you dare. How dare you talk about relationships? Like, I just broke up with my wife. Like, don't talk about that stuff. How dare you call me a woman? I'm a man. And rather than fix the crumbled bricks, what are we trying to do? Change our environment. Everybody else has to change. Everything in my world, everything in my environment. Like I was talking about with the basketball thing, everybody play on their knees so I can feel equal. So that I don't feel bad about being short. It's like, fuck that. Like, we're trying to push the boundaries of athletic ability, whatever. It's like trying to bring, like Cameron says, it took me a long time to process everything that Cameron was saying, because Cameron's been saying this shit for years. Just like Jordan Peterson. I think Cameron referenced a interview from Brett Weinstein when he was talking about what was going on college. Maybe it wasn't you, but when he's talking about what was going on college campuses, with black people and white people, and they're like basically enslaving white people, being like, "Go get me a charger." Like, where's the like they'd be on Facebook, they're like, "Where's a white person? I need a charger." The white people be like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah."
I
Like,
didn't hear about that specifically. That's hilarious.
it was crazy, man, really crazy. But the point is, this was like years ago, I think.
Yeah.
In Jordan Peterson, right? I'll be talking to like my oldest brother, and he'd be like, "Jordan Peterson's so fucking dumb. Like, he thinks that, oh yeah, like you're gonna get in trouble if you say the wrong thing. Like, oh, that's so fucking stupid." Exactly what's happening.
It's like, pay attention. It's happening.
It's
you
literally,
know?
but this was a couple years ago, right? Where it's like, and you know, I couldn't exactly see what he was saying because I didn't have that ability yet, right? But it's like you were saying this from the beginning. You're like, guys, this is where the world is heading. Soon, even Bernard, right? He's like, soon people are not going to be able to leave their houses.
Dude,
You
he
know,
was telling us that like in 2010, 2009, 2010, he was like, eventually no one's going to leave their home. Everything we brought to you, you won't trust the air, you won't trust the water. And he said the people that will become very effective are the people who are willing to go out and take a risk.
Uh,
So what's the risk? Like, think about it.
just being not PC. That's the risk.
Yeah, just not being PC, or also just going outside.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like literally leaving your house. Like that's considered a risk now.
It's crazy.
I just saw I was looking through Twitter, someone posted a video of their kid at Whole Foods. Right? I don't know if it was a Whole Foods or an Amazon store, I'm not sure which. But they had a shopping cart and they were like putting a bag of chips in the shopping cart and it scanned it. It like lit up as they put it into the shopping cart.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
That's cool.
So I was like, bye-bye jobs.
Yep.
Eventually they'll get
Um,
robots that'll put everything on the stores, on the shelves.
it'll just be shopping carts going around. Like instead of the people who grab it and then bring it to people outside, it'll just be the shopping carts like just putting shit and scanning itself, just going.
Well, I mean, we don't ever go in the grocery store anymore.
Hmm.
Like all our shopping, we just do it on an app and then we just go pick it up and someone puts it in our car.
Yeah, that's pretty wicked.
I mean, why? It's not that I have a problem going to the grocery store. We would still, except they're going to make you wear a mask and we're not taking our kids in there.
And it's probably also more convenient.
Oh, it's totally more convenient. But I'm saying, but I don't have an issue
No
per se
problem
of going
with
and picking stuff out. You know,
exactly.
but eventually it won't matter whether I like it or don't like it. You always see these posts on Facebook like, I refuse to use the self checkouts. That's someone's job. And it's like, yes. However, what are you actually doing about it? Because do you think Walmart's like, oh, Joe in Houston didn't like it? Okay. Hey guys, just scrap that 15 years of planning we've been doing, that, you know, that strategic global rollout that we're going to do. Just, yeah, well, let's not do it anymore. Like eventually you won't have an option. There won't be any more cashiers.
You're like, I decided to stop eating because eating means going to the grocery store to get self checkouts. Like,
Well, it's like vegans, right? Who are like, we want to end animal cruelty, so I won't eat meat. Or it's like, I'm not going to use plastic water bottles or whatever the fuck it is. Like, you can't avoid it. They're doing it because it cuts cost. And you know what they'll do is they'll start impulsing you through advertising and movies and so forth to make it seem normal. Just like they did with the masks and everything. And now, have you seen, oh man, we're not going to do any screen shares on here, but I got to show you later. What?
I saw a billboard for a TV show.
Mhm. Yeah, Asia sent one of those in the group.
Did you guys see that
Getting normalized.
did y'all watch that Owen Benjamin video I posted in one
Not
of
the
the
recent
Facebook
one.
groups?
The spell breaking one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see
Yeah,
the
that
part
was
where
good.
he did the Amazon commercial?
Yeah.
I saw
I
the
tried to
Spotify
find it.
one.
I couldn't, or no, I'm sorry. I meant Spotify. Yeah, Spotify.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't actually find it, but I was looking at that going, holy fuck, those people are just autistic. Like they're just fucking autistic, emotionally unstable. It's like, and it's funny because he put like a laugh track on it. And where'd Asif go? I was going to tell him about it. Can you still hear? Okay. I just want to make sure you can still hear. So like it's like these Spotify employees rather, and they're talking about Spotify's new transgender I don't know what you call it,
Policies.
department, but it's like
Yeah.
a program or a division within Spotify that makes sure transgender people get their voices heard and everything.
Like it's
I mean, think about that. A major company.
No,
like,
this is real. This is
it's
real.
a real thing. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
super creative. It's a real thing.
Oh, okay.
But imagine that a major company, like we need to have a whole thing that makes sure our transgender employees have, you know, everything they need. And it like shows like this dude, and he's like this kind of older, kind of weird, dumpy, squat looking dude.
Dumpy said
overweight,
what?
Blue
with like
hair.
long blue hair,
Yeah.
Sick.
like real, just something off, and he's
You mean
talking
a
about,
beautiful young,
yes, a
slim
beautiful brave
woman?
woman. And then it even zooms in on one part where he's like on the keyboard or something, and it shows like he's got his fingernails painted black. And I'm like, oh, okay, got it, yeah, all right. And then they show another person, and it's like this kind of
Wait,
overweight.
This
It's
is not
like
a
it's like the
joke?
same person, but
No, it's like
obviously-
a straight up commercial for
Okay,
Spotify.
Okay. Just for
I couldn't find it on YouTube or anywhere. So somebody must have screen recorded it from TV or something and then they had it on there. But you can find it later on that video I posted. But it was so fascinating because you could just see it's like, oh, these are just people with mental problems. And a company today, like a corporation, can't be like, well, we're just not going to hire people like that. Because I mean, what do you have to choose from then? Do you know what I mean? Because it's like kind of everybody is becoming like that, especially if I don't know where Spotify is located, but I'm guessing they're probably somewhere like
That's why they have
New
to move
York or
to
Portland or
robots.
something. Right. Because I mean, fuck, like you got to have all, I mean, imagine the point where they're like, every single gender needs to have a department. Like, well, fuck, that's like 67 something. It's funny because we joke about it like it's so silly, but people take it seriously.
Mhm.
And at a certain point, it was just a joke. It was like, oh yeah, there's 67 genders. But now it's become a real, like legitimate, people really actually think this is the way it is, to where it's become a point of insanity. But it was funny because what he did was he took the commercial and then he put a laugh track on it. So like when it pans over to the guy and he's got the blue hair and he's talking about whatever, it just has like a laugh track playing. So it's like, it's really funny. But
It's really cool. It's really cool because it really is breaking that spell, so to speak, of like how
Right.
like
It just puts it in the exact same thing in a different context.
right.
Oh, this is funny.
Right. Also, but it's in that same video that he
With the Seinfeld?
has with the Seinfeld one,
Mhm.
where he takes off the laugh track from a Seinfeld episode, and you see just how fucking creepy it is. Just how creepy it is, the situations or the scenarios that they were presenting, and it was like that's a reality for people.
that one was really cool because he made a lot of good points in it where he was saying, so in that episode that he took the laugh track off of Seinfeld, it was like Elaine went to this guy's apartment and when she walks in, she can't see the guy, but he's got like photos of her all over his wall. And she's like, oh shit. And she turns around and he's like behind her and he's like, hi, Elaine, and she's like, oh, hi. But there's like no laugh track.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like, oh shit, this is real creepy, right? Like before it would have been funny, I guess, because it's,
Whoa, this is so crazy.
but what he was explaining in there was, it's like, this is a part of the world you live in when you're in like this really cramped urban setting where women and men are equal. Women don't need a man to protect them. Why is this woman in this situation with this man? And that's something a lot of women fear. But he was saying, like, if you live out like in a rural setting, why would a woman ever be in that situation? It's just not going to happen. And so he was making a really cool point about things like gun control, abortion rights, all these kind of things. They make sense. And, Bernard has talked about this too. Like, you can't just talk about logic because logic itself can be coherent
And
based on your assumptions.
Yeah.
So it's logical. So it's not about logical. It's about common sense. What's best for all. That's the point. Even if something's logical, if it doesn't make sense, I'll be like, that still doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter if it's logical because all of the transgender feminism, all that stuff, there's a logic to it. It's just a matter of whether it's actually best or not. But he made this really cool point. Like all of these things like make sense in the context of the logic that you've accepted by living in this big city. So, now that I think about it, so does the masks and everything as well. It makes sense if you live in like a fucking rat colony that everyone's got diseases and shit and everyone needs to be vaccinated. Like if you were a cattle or a cow in a factory farm, like crammed next to another one, you have to be injected full of vaccines and hormones and all kinds of shit because it's like a totally unnatural environment. And so like, remember like what you were taught in school, like the Black Plague, it came from the cities
Rats.
because they didn't have proper sanitation and shit and all this stuff. Yeah. And it went from the rats to this and that and everything. And it's very clearly like, we're not living in a way that's actually best for all of it. But it'd be so cool. Imagine every person, every family had 20 acres of land, you know, with a home, land, everything they wanted, they needed. You know, you still had the best technology. It's not like you're out there fucking farming, because you have robots and shit that would do all that stuff, you know. But then there could still be places. This is a really cool point that I haven't talked about a lot, but it's a really cool point. There's a video from Bernard. I can't remember what it was called, but it's one of the ones he did like on equal money and energy. I think it was solving the global energy crisis, but I'm not sure if it was that one. But it was one of his videos on equal money on YouTube. And in it, he talks about how, just as an example, he was like, when the time you're like 12 to maybe 16 or something like that, you could go to, for lack of a better term, like, I don't even know what you'd call it. Sort of just like a community group place where you could live together and then learn
like summer
about
camp,
like,
but
it'd be like
for
summer
years.
camp. Exactly. Where you're like doing group activities, socializing, doing all that stuff. And then you're also doing labor, like whatever labor would be required. I can't even imagine what it would be necessarily, because you have to look at what's the state of technology and so forth. But it's like there would be labor that would probably be necessary to keep our system functioning, that everybody has enough. Because when we say everybody should have enough, it's like, well, who's going to do the work? It's like, but when you're 12 to 16, you're out having fun, you're doing it all together. It's like a group activity kind of stuff. And it's not like you're literally plowing a fucking field. I mean, they have tractors that are fully automated that can do shit like that.
And I remember the first time I heard this stuff, I was like, you're going to enslave kids. Two things. It's
Right.
Like, it's like, hey, you can't even work at that point.
Yeah, it's
So-
like instead of that, though, instead of doing that, let's enslave kids from the time they're 4 years old till the time they're 18 in a fucking school where you have to sit. Remember those rules I went over? I showed you guys from that elementary school
Yeah.
down the street.
Dude,
Yeah.
that was the best.
C
That was
for
the
no
fucking-
talking.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, we saw it inside of a school on the wall when Katie and I took the kids to the playground the other day, and it was like this acronym. It said CHAMPS, CHAMPS, and it was part of it was so funny because it said like none of the letters had anything to do with what was next to it. Like it said C, and then next to that it said 0, no talking, and then it said H. What did it say?
Raise your
it was
hand.
H. Raise your hand. That one kind of
Which-
made sense.
Why would you raise your hand in the hallway?
I
Like,
guess
could
'cause
see
you're not
that in
allowed
the
to talk.
classroom.
Yeah, you can't talk. So how are you going to
You
communicate?
literally are not allowed to even fucking open your mouth unless you raise your hand when you're in the hall. So that was H. So that kind of made sense. Hand. A.
Walk,
What
don't
was
run.
it?
Walk. Oh yeah, it was like walk straight.
I have it right
ahead.
here.
Walk.
Yeah.
Don't
A.
run.
Walk in the hallway.
Okay, there you go.
Mm, rhymes.
M. Stay in line. Look forward. P. Keep hands, feet, or objects to yourself. S. Get to your destination. Like the kids are so dumb. They have to be told when you're walking in the hallway, at some point in this process, you should be arriving at your destination. Why is that even part of
In
the rules?
case you
Like,
get lost.
if at any point you find that you're just in the hallway all day, you've made a mistake. But it's like also, aren't they presumably in line? So why does that even have to be a part of the rules? It doesn't make any sense. But what's so funny too is like they put like little emojis next to each thing, and like the one that says "keep your hands to yourself" shows a picture of two people holding hands. I'm like, that's got to be very confusing for the kids. They're like, okay, I hold hands, but I don't ever hold hands to touch anybody. But also the letter P is somehow involved. Not sure why.
Dude, that was the greatest. Like, if I just, that sums it up so beautifully. And it's just like all of it's my favorite part. All of it was my favorite part. How C stands for zero talking. What?
No talking.
It's
doesn't-
like you actually think it was a joke, but you literally
No,
just
this
walked
is
past the
like on
elementary
the
school and took
school-
a picture. Yeah.
You guys will probably see it when you come down here. It's like right there inside the school. You can see it on the wall. It's like, this is a joke, right? Nope. Champs.
So we were trying to think like how did that actually like be a thing that got printed and hung
Like
on a
somebody
wall?
had to be like, I need to make this and put it on the wall
Yeah.
and think it through, and actually was like,
And get approval from somebody.
you got to print
Yeah,
that.
and
I'm
get
ready to
approval
print.
from someone. And it's probably something to do with these people at the school wearing the mask all day, so they aren't even breathing properly. But they're like, it's so stressful already managing these kids. Now they got to do homework. Now there's distance learning. All this shit happening. They're like, just fucking get the thing on the wall. Who cares? if it
Right.
makes
Just do
sense?
it. Yeah.
Just I'm
No,
stressed out.
It's
I need
that's
to
all
control the
committees.
kids.
So they had a committee that created with the acronym. Another committee came up with the rules, and a third committee had to put them together. And they were like,
And then a fourth committee that came up
Huh.
with the pictures.
But they were like,
And they were like, wait,
guys,
the no hand holding thing. Keep your hands and feet to yourself.
uh,
Doesn't line up with the picture. They're like, fuck it. Like,
oh
Mitchell
yeah,
said,
that's another
"We're
one.
just
The
gonna get it
pictures
on the wall."
themselves. So then they looked at all of it and they were like, look, we're just gonna yell at the kids when they do something wrong anyways. And second of all, they can't recognize any of the fucking letters. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be consistent or coherent. Just yell at the kids. That's all you gotta do. Just yell at them. That's the whole point. You know,
With the
It's
mask
total
on.
insanity. Why did we bring this up? Oh, also, you know that big hill at the school, right?
Uh-huh.
They have this big banner there now that's like in the hill, right? So when you go by there, and it's got all the social distancing rules. I'll have to take a picture of that next time. It's
Wow.
insane. And it's like one of them even says something like it's about like keeping your distance. And one of them says, do not congregate. And I'm like, but cram all the kids into one building, but don't congregate. And it's like, it's fucking insane.
And what
Yeah,
we were
or-
talking about before, is
Slavery.
the 12 to 16 going off to summer camp. And so
Oh yeah. So in other words,
Yeah.
you do that. 18, you go to college just to go get a job so you can spend the rest of your
but
fucking
you
life.
know how, like, the first thing that we think of when we think of kids 12 to 16 working is like they're working 8 hours a day, right? Like complete job mentality. Why the fuck would you do that?
It would be way more efficient than that.
You see what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
as soon when you hear that, for those of you listening, feel free to reach out. Let me know if you thought this too. But when I first heard that, I was like, that's fucked up. I was like, how are you gonna make kids work for 8 hours a day? That's not how it would go. The point of it would be to make sure that everybody's having a good time doing it, where you're hanging out with your friends, you guys are working, you guys have a common purpose, and you're not working 8 hours a day. That's ridiculous.
If you actually cared, you could design it in a creative way where anybody would want to do it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And even regardless of that for a second, just take that aside for a second. You have no problem enslaving the vast majority of the world to create a bunch of products that none of us fucking need.
Hmm.
We're doing it every day. And then we put a mask on and pretend like we care. It's like you don't
Yeah.
actually care. You never cared. You never will care. It's not, you don't care. And so even the idea that you're gonna enslave kids for 4 other years of their life to do everything, it's like, well, isn't that what you expect them to do
Or
when they're
40.
18?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Make it
and
easy.
and imagine, don't you agree that you're born to this world, you should contribute to it? Yeah.
Yeah.
We should all contribute. Well, that would be the contribution years, rather than lock them up in a room for 8 hours a day to memorize a bunch of shit. And think about it, to compete with each other. Does it make any sense that school is competitive?
No.
Does it make any
Yeah,
sense that
when-
you have to compete to get a PhD or a master's or anything, or a degree, or to get into college? Like, it makes no sense. Only if like we're so bad at identifying who's actually cut out for certain things.
Explain that a little bit more. Like,
Well, what I'm saying is, like, when you're in school, like you have to get all A's and you have to do certain things to become the valedictorian, right?
right.
Like, not everybody can do it. So do you have an advantage going to college as a valedictorian versus somebody who's at the bottom of the class?
Hmm.
Does the valedictorian necessarily know anymore?
No.
You were valedictorian?
Yeah.
Right?
I was debatably more fucked in terms of.
But I'm just saying, just in terms of knowledge that you took away, did you actually know
in terms
anything?
of what
compared
I
to the
learned
next guy.
more, like what I can do more because of that position. No, not at all.
And in fact, probably your genetic predisposition, personality programming had more to do with you being the
The
valedictorian
things that I did
than
not know
anything
from
else.
school. Exactly.
Right, like the things that just were part of you already. That's
Mm-hmm.
why, like John Taylor Gatto says, there's a propedeutic function of school. It's just as a filter. It's like they found you. They were like, hey, you're kind of different. You're special. Let's promote you up, because then you'll get into the college. That way you can be identified, so you can go to the next point, to the next point. That's how it works. That's like these scholarships they give, like the Rhodes Scholar and all these things. They're there to identify those people that pop up, because how do we do genetics today? Everything's just fucking random. The elite haven't been able to yet engineer everything so that it's like we just breed people. So they have to find ways to identify. You know, I realized something else. Have you guys read Brave New World?
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it? Right?
I'm familiar
It's
with
kind
it.
of a different flavor than 1984. It doesn't feel as dark like when
Yeah.
you read it. It feels more like just weird. It feels more like sci-fi, kind of
hell,
weird,
yeah.
artificial, like almost like a little bit too unrealistic in a way. That's how I kind of looked at it. It's still a cool book, but it's fascinating because in it they literally engineer society. Like they breed people, like, and then they each person is like genetically designed to be in a certain class.
Alpha, beta, gamma, or something.
Yeah, and so like they'll show like the kids that are the alphas, and they'll be like, "You are an alpha. You can do anything. You're amazing." You know, like that. And they show like the deltas and be like, "You're a delta. You accept your place. You're fine. You're not too good, but you're not too bad." You know, like they like program the children from a very young age. I mean, it's like they tell you everything. But I was thinking about the other day when I was driving, dude. Don't we have those terms in society? Like alpha and beta. And I was like, holy shit. Like we actually think of it like that. Like we have alphas and we have betas, and like you're an alpha male and you're this. And I'm like, fuck, man. Like they're so predictive, all of these points. That's a book I definitely recommend too, because it goes into like a different side of things. It's like if you take that and you take 1984 and you put them together, you start to see like how everything was already predicted.
Real quick, do you remember how that book ends?
Which one?
Brave New World. Like, doesn't he just go to a lighthouse and like kill himself or some shit?
I don't remember actually.
Okay, that's just a
Because they're-
side note.
Because they have like they have this guy who's like the savage, right? Who's like they have these cultures that they preserve, which are like savage cultures, which don't
Right.
live by the rules of the normal society, and they preserve them. And then they go into that society and they bring one of the guys like into the mainstream society or something. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read. I was like middle school when I read it.
Right? Yeah,
Do you know what I'm talking about? I don't know if you remember.
I do.
They also made a movie out of it too.
It was the only book that I kind of read in high school. It's pretty good.
And you
not
were
the-
valedictorian.
And for my entire school year, there was one book that I think I scanned through for the biggest report that you had to do in grade 12. God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater by Kurt Vonnegut. And
I thought you were shouting out one of your teachers.
Yeah.
God bless you, Mr. Rosewater. That's the name of
for
a
signing
book.
that book.
And Brave New World. I didn't read. So think about this, right? We say the big fucking crisis, so nobody knows how to read. It's not even rewarded. I didn't read it all.
Yeah.
Use Spark Notes.
Dude, I could talk
Yeah.
like I knew all these fucking books and everything, and I never read any of them in school.
Yeah.
It's like you just listen, and if you have a good memory like you and I do, it's like you just remember it, you pick it up, you see how it connects to something else you heard, and then you're
Exactly.
just able to
There-
talk about
the
it. And
teacher
everyone's
was
like, fuck, man, you're so smart. And it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah. And it's like they're like, trust me, you're not going to get by this time if you just try to watch the movie and you just try to use Spark Notes. But it's like, if you have that ability to be like, this is what they're saying in Spark Notes, so I can see what they were kind of saying in the book,
Mhm.
and then just make the point.
You've underestimated my ability to game your system.
Yeah,
exactly.
Give me a break.
And it's like, and everybody fucking did it.
It's
Not
if you
not just
if you
the-
standardize the grading, I can game it. Okay, like there's no
Mhm.
way around it.
Exactly. And so it's like, you know what the most interesting part that I realized, right? A long time ago, when I was making the shift out of the mindset of, okay, so Cameron, what you're saying is there's a group of people in the school system. There's a group of people in society. There's a group of people somewhere that are like, oh, that's the one, like take him and make sure he gets the scholarships and guide him down that path. It's not like that. It's not like a group of people are like that one and that one and that one. We got to make sure that we, whatever. It's like, now it's automated in society where teachers are supporting the quote unquote smart kids or the academic kids or whatever. You know, we had the applied and academic stream or the university or the college streams in high school. And it's like, it's automated that reward the smart kids and make to feel dumb the college kids who can actually do stuff, right? And it's automated in our system. It's like, you don't need to hire an assassin to take out the person who pokes their head out anymore. You just let them post to social media. And everyone's so fucking brainwashed that society will just eat them up. You see what I'm saying? It's not like a group of people who have to do that anymore. What's
You know,
funny?
also, oh, no, just the way you said it.
I'm
What- what-
smiling because like this is it reminds me of like listening to a Bernard audio because basically Cam's already said that. What you just said, Cam already said that like a few minutes ago, right?
Oh.
But he said it in like more advanced vocabulary, right? And it's like listening to a Bernard audio and you have no idea what was said, but then once you start advancing, you go back, you listen to it and you're like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you're advancing your vocabulary listening to this, you're going to go, Cameron just said that. Why is he saying it again? But if you had no idea, then it's like you're hearing that. Like now you're getting to that point. It's like, oh, but then.
But you know, another thing I was looking at too was there's also ways in which it's done systematically, like where it's not just kind of automated from the perspective that it still requires everybody's sort of participation. But imagine if you were I don't know, I'm just thinking like, let's say you're like the CIA and you like wanted very specific people. You could just create a scholarship. You know what I mean? And it wouldn't have to even be from the CIA. It could be like the such and such foundation and it have a scholarship and it has certain requirements and like you have to put an application and they're looking for something even though they're not saying what it is. And then they give that person a scholarship. You see what I mean? And then people like there's people like Cory Booker, you know, that senator, he was a Rhodes Scholar, you know, so was Bill Clinton. Like you have this, it's not an accident, you know, what's her name? Rachel Maddow. I think she was a Rhodes Scholar, right?
Yeah.
The news anchor, right? She's like a major one on MSNBC. I think she was a Rhodes Scholar. She was one of these kind of scholarship things, right? But in other words, it's done in very specific ways like that too. But then also how all they have to do is identify what it is you want. It's like, I want prestige. I want da, 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 da. So then they create something that sort of attracts that, but then they know based on their criteria, what they're actually looking for and who they're going to get out of it. You know?
So going back to the brainwashing of men and women, that's what we started this as, eh? At the end of the
Feels
day,
like ages ago.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's like society is comprised of these two types of humans. If we make it simple terms.
Plus or minus 67.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is individually, neither of them are taking responsibility to change what they've accepted. And the only way you're going to be able to do that is by using these tools, right? It's like Mitchell, you got your degree in psychology, yeah? I wanted to be a psychologist. I studied so many different modalities of change. And at the end of it, you find out that none of it actually creates actual real change, even in your own life. But the best way to measure what these tools produce is if you just go look at the self-perfected group. How many groups, for those of you who are already in it, how many groups are you a part of that you actually participate in on a weekly basis, on a regular basis, that you actually share cool shit with and you learn stuff with on a regular basis? Facebook fucking groups, man. Like, we don't even see each other in person, but do you not feel connected to the other people in the group? It's within a common purpose. And so what I'm saying is the product of these tools, looking at the destiny principles, right? It was really cool. People are writing down the destiny principles to really give it more context for themselves, make it more meaningful to them. Using TechnoTutor, doing self-forgiveness, creating self-commitment statements, and being honest with yourself, and really committing yourself to change. The output of that is, to be clear, it's not just me, Cameron, Drake, Mitchell, Kian, whoever else you've seen here. It's like, this is just one of the things that we've created and that we're doing. So a bunch of other people, like, for example, somebody who became a distributor, who got connected through the Jin to somebody else, and they started talking. And then another person, it's like, who's in Self-Perfected now, she saw, Marley on a podcast that he was doing for somebody else. And then Marley connected him with Kian, and then they started chatting, and she got the book, and now she's in Self. It's like, we're creating these points, these groups, these communities all over the place. And step by step, it's going to grow, it's going to grow, and it's going to grow. My point is, these are things that not only did I not think I could do, I didn't think of ever doing it. Like what I'm doing now, I never even thought about doing. And then I started thinking about doing it, and then I'm doing it now. You guys feel the same way?
Mhm.
It's like I never even considered that my life, like before, when I was an actor and I was like perfectly just living out my pre-programming, that's when I felt, I'm like, finally, I can see myself doing something longer than 1 year. I'm like, I can see myself doing this 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. It's because that's what the system determined that my kind of programming is to be used for. But the cool thing, and so then I saw my whole life like ahead of me. The only way you can do that is if you already know that you're pre-programmed. Right? But when I started using this stuff, it's like you're changing so fast that you can't predict what the next year is going to look like. And, Mitch and Jess are the perfect example of that. It's like a year ago, you weren't even working with TechnoTutor and you were single, or you were in another relationship, if that's correct, right?
Mhm.
And you were living at home, I think, or you're moving around a little bit.
The time that I got TechnoTutor?
No, a year ago today.
Yeah.
And so it's
I
like,
had lived all over, and then I ended up back at my freaking parents' house. I was like, wow.
and you're in
But
another
I had a
relationship.
network.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
different
You're in another
relationship, all that.
relationship and you weren't even working with TechnoTutor. In a year, it's like, okay, he got a new job. Okay, he didn't just get a new job, he started a new business. Okay, you started a couple new businesses, right? And then, okay, not only did you get out of a relationship, you got into a new relationship that you see the longevity of it. It's going to be a forever thing. Okay, not only that, it's like you have your partner working together with you. Okay, you didn't just move because you moved twice. It's like you
Mhm.
moved out, you got your own place. It was a wicked place. And then, I mean, Drake speaks of this. The place you have now is like times
It's a fucking hotel, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many
I-
fucking rooms in here. It's ridiculous.
So many bathrooms too, right?
Yeah.
It's like all of us can be taking a shit when we're all there, right?
That's right.
At the same time. And so it's like, that's the output. It's like you can't even predict what your life is going to be like next year. And it's a good thing because what these tools do for you is they make you ultimately adaptable. You don't have to be able to predict what your life's going to be like next year because you know that whatever it is, you have confidence in your ability to process whatever's happening and then make the best out of it. And if you're not able to do that, then life is going to just keep fucking sucking. Like, I think all of us remember what it was like when we had no purpose. It was what Cameron was talking about, right? It's like when you don't have a purpose and there's not something that you're committed to, everything gets to you. You're worried
Mhm.
about who's calling you what name and this and that and, what's going on here and blah, blah, blah. But it's like when you have something bigger to focus on and something comes into your field that's like, focus on me. Like, I'm important. You're like, no, you're fucking not. Even though before that would bother you, but now it's like, that doesn't matter, that I need to do what I'm doing. Because if we don't, well, what's the result of it? It's like this world is going to continue to amplify and express that mental illness is the peak of society. Another way of saying that is Cardi B is who you should be listening to. Like, I watched that Biden Cardi B interview.
What'd you
Oh
think?
I watched it, right?
It's like a mating call.
And it was
Yeah, for frogs.
It's like when I open my window outside, I just hear.
like, imagine a 7-year-old being like, talking to the president and being like, I think that, when I was going to school, I didn't have enough money to pay for snacks. And so I think that when you go to school should be paid for and snacks should be paid for. It's like, would you listen to that 7-year-old? Wouldn't you be like, oh, that's so cute. Like, that's
Yeah.
awesome. Or would you be like, yeah. That's who we need representing. That's shit that she actually fucking said.
Yeah.
Like, not quote end quote, but that's what she was talking about. She's like, see, I just think that it should be like this and like this. And she's like, see, my fan base, they're all just focused on makeup and all this stuff, but I think they should go out and vote for you. That's a good impression, eh? That's pretty good.
But then also, she doesn't actually believe any of that because she's out there making a lot of money and doing all this stuff. Like, she's not,
Exactly.
she doesn't give a fuck about healthcare. It's like she's just a puppet. She's got nothing actually to say no real thought about it. How much time do you think she's actually had to actually think about politics whatsoever? And
She's
prior
busy
to Joe
making the
Biden, she was
the
talking to
wet-ass
Bernie
pussy
Sanders.
video.
Hold on,
Right,
she did one with Bernie Sanders before that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All the stuff that she thought Bernie Sanders was going to give her, she just was like telling Joe Biden, and he was like, "Okay, what's your name again, little girl? What do you want from Santa?" You know, he didn't know what the fuck's going on.
I love it when she sit on my lap.
No, I know. What's so funny about it is like when she's with Joe Biden, she's got like a suit on. She got those long, weird nails, but she's like, yo, click, click, click. Yo, you know, I want some like free healthcare and all this stuff. And then I want them to just play that with Joe Biden. And right in between, he's like in between her, him, and then the wet ass pussy video just playing on, you know, right there. Like, this is who you're talking to.
Yeah.
Okay. This is who you're talking to. It makes no sense whatsoever. And all it is,
Promoting.
it's just like the masks. Like they get the celebrities to come out there and say it, because the people who, okay, imagine that you're a person who literally you follow Cardi B, like she's important in your life. You'll just vote for Biden because she said that she's doing it. That's how dumb it is. So that shit works. It seems like, oh, why would this just so dumb? But it actually works. And I think that the celebrities coming out wearing masks and all this stuff, I think it had an effect too. You know, it's funny. We were driving down the freeway. This was like a few months ago, and there was a billboard, and it had the mayor of Houston, and then it had Simone. I forget her last name. She's like that gymnast, right? I think she's from Houston, and she's like the best gymnast in the world or whatever. And they're both wearing masks, and so they had to write underneath like who they were. You know, it was like Ted Turner, mayor of Houston, Simone Biles or whatever her name is, like, you know, world-class gymnast or whatever. It's like, because they're wearing these masks, you can't even see who the fuck they are. But I think it has an impact. Like, it's like, okay, I see the celebrity doing it. You know, I think that's what the NBA with all that stuff, it's just the same thing. It's like showing people it's just normal. It's a part of it and everything. Doesn't matter if people agree or not.
Yeah.
Why don't we leave it there, guys? Because I actually have another meeting to get to.
Cool.
Okay. See you, dudes.
So wear a mask, stay safe. Don't go visit self-perfected.com. Do not join the Facebook group.
Do not even question how brainwashed you are.
Do not join the group and answer the questions. Do not ask questions. Just hold on. All we need to remember, just to sum it up real quick, champs should be able to remember just from that what the steps are.
See
If you
means
can't,
no talking.
Then you need. If you can't remember what they are, then you need Technotutor.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. See you,
Yeah, man.
dudes.
Bye, everyone.